Hello everyone, I know you watched this video to accompany you to sleep. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to tell me where you are from and what time you watched this video. Let's jump straight into the story. Story 1. Imagine that suddenly one of you gets a viper and bites you, and the viper leaves. And what do you have left? Poison. This case shook Mexico, the Catholic Church of that country, and the parishioners who could not understand who had the motive to take the life of the young deacon. Especially when the main and only suspect was a priest who had been in the priesthood for more than 20 years. This is a shocking story of a fatal attack whose motive was never entirely clear. So what happened? The story of Father Francisco Javier Bautista Avalos takes place in the Miguel Hidalgo neighborhood in Mexico City's Tlalpan municipality. For over 15 years, Father Francisco Javier Bautista Avalos served as the pastor of Cristo Salvador Catholic Church. He shared with parishioners who attended out of conviction in Christian faith, participating in several activities promoted by the church. He also attended social events within the community without a cassock, like an ordinary citizen. Father Francisco had been admired, respected, and loved by his parishioners since his arrival at the church in 2004. The Miguel Hidalgo neighborhood is named after the military priest who played a role in the initial phase of the Mexican Independence War, and is also known as the father of the country. This neighborhood is known for its high-quality services and education, as well as its bustling commercial activity. A lot of people, both residents and visitors, go through this important area of the Mexican capital every day. Many of these visitors sought Father Francisco, who is believed to possess both soul and body healing powers. On Alfredo B. Bonfil Street, it was common to see long lines of believers gathering at the church, especially on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. On these days, Francisco received local and foreign parishioners of all ages and social backgrounds. They came with the hope of being heard and having their problems resolved. During these 3 days each week, parents could be seen outside the parish with portraits of their children. Some had addiction problems, others had disappeared, and some had been abducted, putting their lives in danger. People with physical pain or spiritual afflictions also came to the parish. Cases of demonic possession and evil spirits deserved special mention. Although there were very few, they too received attention. Father Francisco had become famous for his healing acts and exorcisms. This way of proceeding, very different from that of most priests, led him to be a regular guest on television shows specializing in supernatural topics. He also published the book, Psalms and Prayers to Heal the Soul. All this contributed to the priest's reputation and the spread of his special abilities. There was a particular ceremony that made him look very powerful. Sometimes the rite occurred in a temple bench corner, on other occasions, in front of the atrium, or standing face to face with the believer. In any of these forms, the rite of reception was fulfilled, during which the parishioner unburdened their sorrows while the priest listened and prayed. The duration varied according to the seriousness of the case. If necessary, the religious man turned to one side, and with a subtle movement of his head, he indicated to Guile to pass him the oil that Friar Francisco would then smear on the believer to end the reception. For the closest parishioners, Guile's presence was normal. It was said that the father discovered that the 60-year-old woman had a special gift. That is why she was his shadow in every healing act or exorcism. She lived a few blocks from the church and, together with her husband, sold various religious articles outside the temple. Before becoming the pastor of Cristo Salvador Catholic Church, Father Francisco addressed the Maria Reina Catholic Church, another nearby temple, also in the Miguel Hidalgo neighborhood. Since those years, he had already begun to become famous for his exorcism rituals. In fact, there are still those who claim that he received training in the Vatican for this type of practice. On the days when the rite of reception wasn't held at the Cristo Salvador Catholic Church, the temple was still very crowded because of the masses that started very early in the morning. Father Francisco received the sick who came to Mass as early as 7 a.m. and anointed the foreheads of the believers to heal them. The versatile religious man wasn't only dedicated to his ecclesiastical duties, but was often seen sharing and accompanying the community in various social and sporting events, as well as during different celebrations and other community activities. He enjoyed great admiration and much appreciation from his parishioners, who thanked him for being so close to his community. In addition, he promoted various local improvements and encouraged the development of recreational and sports activities. The closest members of the parish believed blindly in this shepherd of souls and testified to the supposed miracles and healings performed by the priest. That is why they followed Friar Francisco with unwavering faith, completely convinced of the religious vocation he discovered when he was very young. Hugo Leonardo Avendano also found his vocation at a young age. A boy from the community who, as the years went by, became Father Francisco's right-hand man. Hugo accompanied and assisted him in different areas within the Cristo Salvador Catholic Church. Leo, as he was affectionately called, was born in Mexico in 1990 into a traditional family. He grew up with his parents and his brother Josue Vicente Avendano. He always liked to study, and since he was a child, he was very intelligent, polite, and kind to people. He had the desire to help and serve them through his faith in the Catholic religion. While still very young, Leo decided to become a priest after finishing his high school studies and chose to study theology at Intercontinental University. After graduating, he decided to continue his education at the same university and enrolled in the master's program in psychoanalytic psychotherapy. He combined his subjects with missiology to get the specialization as a missionary and evangelizer, while also focusing on the scientific principles of psychology to have the necessary tools to analyze mental disorders. The young man had a very clear religious stance that he used to share in his posts on social media. He expressed his ideas in favor of the church, as well as his criticisms and disagreements regarding certain aspects of society. Like many young people, liked to travel around his country and the world. He also enjoyed learning about new cultures. At some point in 2012, Father Francisco and the young man's paths crossed, and over the years they became very close. The priest knew Leo's family well. The attachment became stronger in 2015 when Leo became his deacon. He was a very cheerful and devoted young man, always helping the priest and the community at the parish. Given the close relationship between Father Francisco and Leo, it was usual for them to schedule different meetings in the evening hours. Many of these meetings extended into the early hours of the morning, when each would resume their personal agendas. The last time Josue heard from his brother Leo was Tuesday, June 11, 2019. As usual, the young deacon and Father Francisco would meet that evening to work on some church business. The young man was wearing blue pants, a light shirt, and black shoes. On Wednesday morning, June 12th, Josue was a little concerned when he tried to reach Leo and was unable to speak to him. Leo hadn't returned home either. Then Josue received a call that increased his distress. Father Francisco contacted him to say that the young deacon had not shown up at the church despite their agreement. At that time, there was a lot of uncertainty in the community. People were afraid because by the middle of 2019, the violence figures in the Mexican capital were alarming. Authorities had registered nearly 700 homicide victims, almost 30 kidnappings, and more than a dozen femicides. In addition to these worrying statistics, the cases of Aide Mendoza and Norberto Ronquillo had a deep impact on public opinion. 2 students were killed in strange circumstances. At that time, the authorities had not shown truly solid progress in clarifying what had happened and catching those responsible. Amid this climate of great uncertainty, Josue decided to go to the prosecutor's office and report the disappearance of his brother. He was attended to at the office, specialized in the search, location, and investigation of missing persons, where he said that Leo had gone to the Cristo Salvador Catholic Church the day before, around 11 p.m. He specified that neither he nor the rest of the family knew where the young deacon was at that moment. According to Josue's statements to the authorities, his brother was going to meet with the parish priest. To make the search easier, the authorities asked him what route Leo regularly took. In detail, Josue told them that he normally took the route from his house in the Icalco neighborhood in Iztapalapa, along Axis 3, and then the inner loop to the exit of the Tlalpan municipality. Finally, he joined the viaduct that led him to Insurgents Avenue, and from there to the Cristo Salvador Catholic Church. The information about Leo's usual route was the starting point for the official investigations to find, hopefully, at some point along the route, some clue about his whereabouts. Finally, Josue declared that his brother had sent a message to a friend on the night of June 11th, telling him that he would meet Father Francisco at the church and stay overnight at his house. While Josue was giving his statement at the prosecutor's office that same Wednesday morning, June 12th, the Secretariat of Citizen Security received a call reporting a suspicious car that had been abandoned in the Heroes de 1910 neighborhood on Eucalyptus Street and Louisiana Marina Road. Ernestina Godoy said, Elements of the Secretariat of Citizen Security arrive at the scene at 10 a.m., who apprehend the body of a person inside the vehicle and give notice immediately to the police. Authorities from the public prosecutor's office and police officers responded to the call and went to the scene to begin investigations. When they inspected the gray Chevrolet vehicle, they discovered the body of a male in the back seat, estimated to be 25 to 30 years old. He was covered with a yellow blanket. The investigators immediately requested the presence of forensic medicine and criminalistics technicians. During the preliminary inspection, the experts determined that there were signs of physical abuse on several parts of the young man's body, especially on his face. They even recorded that he had lost some teeth because of the violent attack. They concluded that his life might have been taken by asphyxiation, but they would have to carry out all the pertinent studies to determine and clarify what happened, as well as to identify the victim. The forensic analysis allowed for the identification of the body found inside the car. It was the young Deacon Hugo Leonardo Avendano Chavez, who at only 29 years old, had been killed by pressure applied to his neck to prevent the passage of air after a fierce and very violent attack. With all this information, the authorities provided Josue with the details of the macabre finding. From that moment, his brother's report changed from the office specializing in disappearances to the section of the prosecutor's office in charge of homicides. Expressions of grief and demands for justice were not long in coming. Visibly moved family members, friends, students, and members of the community started different protest actions. It was a time when the feelings of loss in society were at their peak. Since just 2 days before, public opinion had heard the news of the kidnapping and subsequent fatal attack against Norberto Ronquillo, a student of international marketing at Pedregal University. Students from several academic and educational institutions joined together to make a video that circulated on different social media networks. With great sadness but also firmness, they demanded that the authorities fulfill their duty to protect citizens and conduct a swift investigation to clarify what happened and arrest the offenders. In the video, the young people demanded justice for Leo and for the thousands of missing people in the country. They identified themselves as members of several public and private universities, including Pedregal University, the National Polytechnic Institute, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and the National Pedagogical University, among others. They raised demands for peace and tranquility, expressing their desire to go out safely to study, work and have fun without threats to their safety and risks that would prevent them from returning home safe and sound. They demanded their right to live in a safe country, Francisco said. A day after the discovery, on Thursday, June 13, 2019, Leo's body was taken to the Cristo Salvador Catholic Church, where his funeral wake would be held during the night. Father Francisco officiated the funeral mass in honor of his deacon, and later offered some statements to the media, Francisco said. But there are wolves, right? And this is intensifying. I mean, not only are the 2 students now being promoted on television, but what about the others, right? The parents, the children, those who have suffered all this, what happens, right? How many people are suffering? During his statements, the priest referred to how moved the community was, not only by Leo's case, but by other cases that had also resonated in public opinion. He regretted that episodes such as those that had occurred were becoming a daily occurrence, robberies, unlawful deprivations of liberty, and crimes against life. All of these were keeping parents, children, and the community in general in constant anguish, Francisco said. It is clear that what all this caused, what they promised, right? That they do their job, but I repeat, that they also involve us so that these things decrease. Despite the difficult circumstances in which he was expected to be moved by losing his right-hand man and the person closest to him, the priest acted completely normally. During his statements, he spoke very calmly with a calm voice. No one could imagine the dark secrets that this apparently peaceful and charismatic religious man was hiding. 3 days after Leo's farewell mass, authorities issued an arrest warrant for Father Francisco. The prosecutor's office, as well as Mexico's Attorney General's office, had indisputable evidence incriminating him. Based on those reports, on June 16th, the controlled judge issued the arrest warrant. 3 days later, on Wednesday, June 19th, 2019, Priest was arrested and transferred to the Orient Men's Prison located in Mexico City. The investigations carried out allowed the Attorney General's office to obtain several videos in which Leo was observed in his vehicle arriving at the Cristo Salvador Catholic Church, a little after 11 p.m. Also, It was recorded that his departure was at 3:16 a.m. on Wednesday, June 12th. At that time, the deacon left the church accompanied by Father Francisco. The camera is located at different points along the public road captured at about 3:26 a.m. Leo's vehicle during its journey from the church along the Picacho-Ajesco highway until it reached the place where it was finally located, in the Heroes de 1910 neighborhood. The arrival of a second vehicle was also recorded a few minutes later. In the video, it was seen clearly that Father Francisco boarded that car and left the place after about 13 minutes. Finally, on Wednesday, June 12th, a little after 4 a.m., the security cameras captured the second vehicle as it drove down the Picacho-Ajesco highway. It was driving away from the area where Leo's vehicle was abandoned and where his body was eventually located. Rodrigo de la Riva said, at 10:00 p.m., the victim sent a message to a person close to him stating that he would spend the night at the suspect's home. According to the C5 camera images, the vehicle remained inside the home of the suspect without moving from 11:04 p.m. on June 11th until 3:16 a.m. on June 12th. That is 4 hours and 12 minutes. At 3:48 a.m., the C5 camera again captured the vehicle heading towards the place where the victim was found. According to Attorney General's office sources, Mexico City authorities requested the issuance of an immigration alert to prevent the priest from leaving the country. This measure was justified because they had a recording of the priest on board a vehicle on his way to the airport. Ernestine Agadoy said, "Our investigation work will be rigorous. It will continue to be rigorous, strictly adhering to the law, respecting the guarantees and human rights of the victims, their families, and those who are accused of any alleged responsibility." Two strong pieces of evidence further implicated Father Francisco. The first was the discovery of a message in which Leo told him that he had arrived at the church. This important piece of information was obtained after the young deacon's phone was checked. The second piece of evidence was that the investigating authorities found the keys to Leo's vehicle in the priest's possession. Despite the evidence against him, the priest denied having met with his deacon. He referred to the call he had with Josue a few hours after Leo's disappearance, in which he affirmed that Leo had not attended the scheduled meeting. Although the investigations pointed directly at the priest, his parishioners believed in his innocence and were ready to defend him vehemently. Reactions were not long in coming. As soon as the arrest became known, a group from the community organized to protest and affirmed that the most serious of injustices were being committed. Ana Lilia said, "Unfair, terribly unfair. We are very dismayed and hurt. The authorities are not doing things properly and are crucifying a just man, an incomparable man. We would like to have a high-level politician like him." Garcia Hernandez said, "How is it possible that they believe that for God's sake? Have all of you lost your feelings? Have you all? Everybody is sensationalist. They make up stories for God's sake, and they still eat and sleep peacefully. I can't believe it. God is watching us." The case soon became the topic of conversation and speculation both publicly and privately. Rumors were everywhere, prompting Attorney General Ernestina Godoy to address the gossip officially. She ruled out the possibility that Leo had been kidnapped by illegal groups, noting that the family had not received any ransom calls asking for money. She also dismissed the theory of a crime of passion, despite some media spreading this news. Godoy emphasized that, based on the characteristics of the case, it was being investigated as a homicide. Josue Avendano said, according to information published by some printed and media news outlets, the authorities had found some very compromising pictures on the deacon's tablet. These appeared to document intimate meetings involving Father Francisco and other priests, leading to speculation that extortion was the main reason for his death. However, this theory was not confirmed by investigators, and the case followed a different line of inquiry. The victim's relatives also dismissed this hypothesis entirely. Lourdes Morgia, an investigative journalist with access to the case file, gave a scoop on a TV show. She confirmed the line of investigation that authorities were pursuing after the arrest of Father Francisco, who was considered the main suspect in the deacon's death. The hypothesis involved extortion, but not due to passion. Instead, Leo had apparently uncovered several irregularities in the administration of parish resources. Based on the data in her possession, Lourdes reported that authorities had found compelling evidence pointing directly at the priest. According to Mexican law, investigators had between 3 and 24 months to gather all the evidence needed to prove their case and clarify the events. As part of the important revelations, the journalist highlighted Leo's lifestyle. which seemed to involve expenses far exceeding those of an ordinary student, as Leo did not work and dedicated himself to his studies. He had no major income sources beyond monthly support of 10,000 pesos, about 600 tons, from his mother, who passed away early in 2019, ending that support. Leo was not known to have any employment, and his income from the church was not constant. However, the young man had made different trips to places like Miami in the United States, Aspen in Switzerland, and even the Middle East. Another curious fact was the vehicle he owned. How could it be explained that the deacon drove a new, expensive, and latest model car? He also had a state-of-the-art cell phone. Finally, there was no way to explain how Leo, a few days before his death, was able to rent a house near the parish, for which he would have to pay about 6,000 pesos a month, approximately 350. In fact, the young man had invited his family to come and see the apartment, and they had planned to do so on Friday, June 14, 2019. That meeting never happened, because someone took his life. Lerd also noted that Leo had significant amounts of cash and money in bank accounts, with several transfers that he received from Father Francisco. The more details were revealed, the more implicated the priest seemed in everything that had happened. However, he remained firm in his position of innocence, and did not provide any relevant information about Leo's lifestyle. Again and again, Father Francisco claimed that he had nothing to do with the death of the young deacon. Father Hugo Valdemar, former spokesman for the Archdiocese of Mexico, confirmed the same to the media after visiting Father Francisco in prison. Father Hugo condemned the actions of the authorities, accusing them of manipulating the evidence. He assured the media that, despite everything, Father Francisco remained calm, and that the defense lawyers would present the respective proofs of the priest's innocence. Jorge Cuadra said the priest's lawyers, Jorge Cuadra and Jorge Peno, also asserted the priest's innocence and questioned the investigation's development. In their opinion, the videos presented, which placed him with the victim at the scene of the crime, were not sufficient to hold him responsible for taking Leo's life. Just as the ecclesiastical representatives defended the priest vehemently, the community was on the same line of action. The demonstrations of support and solidarity from Miguel Hidalgo's inhabitants for Father Francisco were unwavering. From the moment they learned of the priest's detention, the community maintained a steadfast attitude over the following months. An important group within the community insisted that the authorities had made a mistake, and that Fr. Francisco could not have committed such an abominable act. The parish priest's defenders did not limit themselves to prayers or demonstrations within the church. They took their discontent to the streets, leading to several protests. Community members called for Father Francisco's release with banners, cardboard, and clothing signs displaying messages of support for the priest. They insisted on his innocence and demanded his release. A large demonstration completely shut down the southern part of the busy Insurgents Avenue. They also gathered at the Cristo Salvador Catholic Church, where after praying, they loudly proclaimed the priest's innocence and demanded his release from the authorities. Public, the priest is innocent. The priest is innocent. Journalist. This is how Cristo Salvador parishioners protested. During the demonstrations in favor of the priest's release, community members also denounced the alleged excesses committed by the media. They accused the media of spreading false information about the case and sensationalizing it. Some individuals expressed their anger by threatening to physically harm and expel journalists from the parish. More than a year after the terrible attack that resulted in Leo's death, the Avendano family reported that in early December 2020, the first hearing was held in the trial court in Orient Prison. There, Father Francisco was serving preventive detention as the main suspect in killing the young man in the early morning of June 12, 2019. Both the prosecution and the defense presented data, evidence, and all the elements collected to be analyzed during that first hearing. During that session, the only family member who gave statements was Leo's cousin as a witness. On the other hand, some neighbors and shopkeepers near the Cristo Salvador parish still could not believe that such a charismatic and close priest was guilty of killing the deacon. Some locals admitted that they stepped away and stopped attending the parish after all that happened. In April 2021, after evaluating all the evidence presented, the court found Father Francisco Javier Bautista Avalos guilty of the murder of young Hugo Leonardo Avendano Chavez. Leo's brother Josue informed that the decision to declare him guilty was made collegially, and that the evidence against the priest was solid. From then on, it only remained to wait for the hearing to be held later. Josue Avendano said, on April 9, 2021, Father Francisco was sentenced to 27 years and 6 months in prison for ending Leo's life. In addition, he was ordered to pay a sum of 422,000 pesos, about $25,000 as reparation for damages to the family members. In the same sentencing hearing, it was informed that the religious man would not enjoy any benefit instead of the prison sentence, because it is a case of aggravated homicide. The defenders have informed that they would appeal the court's decision, considering that they had enough arguments in favor and insisting on his innocence. On social media, the priest posted that in the next few days, the necessary steps for the appeal of the sentence would be taken. He asked his followers to wait for it and said that they would be informed about it. Father Francisco always maintained his innocence and swore that he was in his bedroom that night. He said he regretted Leo's death but claimed no responsibility for the event. However, the geolocation of his cell phone placed him at the place where the deacon's body was found. Not only that, both his and Leo's cell phones had the same geolocation during the whole sequence of events of that early morning. The images recorded by the security cameras added to this, and finally, he was blamed for not being able to explain why the keys to the young man's vehicle were in his possession. For believers, religious temples are a place for reflection and meditation. They are also a place to open their hearts and humbly surrender to God. However, on some occasions, as in our case today, these spaces have given rise to different situations that, far from doing good, have generated pain, sadness, and even indignation. This was another sad example of how heartbreaking it can be when a religious man gives into temptation and allows himself to be dragged into darkness. Josue Avendano said, although justice was served in this case, the pain endured by the Avendano family is irreparable. Hopefully, the responsible authorities can act effectively to prevent such situations from occurring again, so that cases like Leo's are never repeated. Story 2. How much hatred does it take for someone to kill an entire family, including a 4-year-old child? That was the question asked by a passerby who witnessed a crime that took place in 1998. It was a heartbreaking case that left many speechless after the perpetrator was brought to justice. I'll take you back to the years before 2000 to delve into a murder case that occurred in Jiangsu, China. At 4 a.m. on February 12, 1998, the early year weather felt particularly unique. Mrs. Zhang, 53 from Kama Village, Dantu District, Zhenjiang City, Jiangsu Province, China, woke up early as usual to prepare vegetables to sell at the market. The early morning air was refreshing. However, today, instead of the usual scent of morning dew, Mrs. Zhang smelled something burnt and smoky in the air. Puzzled, she thought, what's burning so early in the morning? She murmured to herself. The sun had not yet risen, and darkness still enveloped the village. As Mrs. Zhang stepped outside, a light caught her eye. Looking southeast, she saw a house engulfed in flames. It was the home of Zhao Maian's family. Recognizing the urgency, Mrs. Zhang didn't hesitate and shouted loudly, "Fire! There's a fire! Everyone, there's a fire!" Her cries woke the villagers, who rushed to extinguish the flames. But unfortunately, the fierce fire had already consumed the entire house. By 5:40 a.m., the Dantu police arrived at the scene after being alerted by the village chief. The burned-down house belonged to 55-year-old Zhao Maian. He lived with his wife, Li Shirqi, 50, their youngest daughter, Zhao Qingqing, 22, their eldest daughter-in-law, Wang Kuaiqiao, 29, and 2 grandchildren aged 7 and 4. Kama village had a small population, with families typically living together across multiple generations, so the houses were often spaced far apart. This might explain why the fire at the Zhao family's home went unnoticed for so long. According to the surrounding villagers, when they discovered the fire, the house was already engulfed in flames. Throughout the ordeal, no one heard any cries for help. Despite the villagers' efforts to extinguish the fire, it took over an hour for the flames to subside. When the rescue team arrived, it took another 2 hours to completely extinguish the fire. Upon inspection, the police detected the smell of gasoline, indicating that this was an intentional arson. Based on the intensity of the fire and information from the villagers, the police estimated the fire was set around 3 a.m. on February 12, 1998. After the fire was extinguished, the house was reduced to ashes. The police searched through the rubble and eventually found the victims' bodies. As suspected, this was a deliberate murder. The perpetrator had taken advantage of the Zhao family's resting time, with revenge being the presumed motive. The fire was so intense that the bodies were charred beyond recognition, with their clothes burned off, making it impossible to identify them. There were 5 victims in total, including 4 adults and 1 child. Upon hearing this, Mrs. Zhang spoke up. That must be the entire Zhao Mayan family, except for his daughter-in-law and grandchild. The police were surprised by Mrs. Zhang's certainty and asked her how she knew. Mrs. Zhang explained that 2 days prior, Li Shiki had sent her daughter-in-law, Wang Kikyo, back to her parents' home in front of the neighbors. Initially, it was understood that 7 people lived in the Zhao family's house, but only 5 bodies were found, because 2 had left and were fortunate to survive. However, this timely departure made Wang Kikyo, the daughter-in-law, a prime suspect in the case. After investigating, the police discovered that Wang Kikyo had been living with the Zhao Mayan family for 7 years. According to neighbors, her relationship with her in-laws was not very good. The reason was not her temperament, but because they believed she brought bad luck to her husband. In 1991, Wang Kikyo married Zhao Xing, the son of Zhao Mayan. Initially, Li Shiki did not approve of the relationship, because Wang Kikyo was 2 years older than Zhao Xing and had been married before. However, due to her son's persistence, Li Shiki reluctantly agreed. Unexpectedly, just 2 months after the wedding, Zhao Xing suffered a work-related accident and fell into a vegetative state. A few months later, he passed away due to his injuries. Seeing her son die so painfully, Li Shiki blamed Wang Kikyo entirely. She intended to make her life miserable, but then Wang Kikyo found out she was pregnant. Despite her anger and hatred, Li Shiki decided to endure the loss and take care of Wang Kikyo for the sake of the unborn child. According to neighbors, the birth of the baby was both a blessing and a curse for Wang Kikyo. The Zhao family held traditional patriarchal views, and when they found out Wang Kikyo had given birth to a daughter, they ignored and continued to mistreat her. However, they did acknowledge Xiao Huan, Wang Kikyo's daughter, as their own and supported both mother and child for 7 years. At that time, it was very difficult for a woman nearing 30, uneducated, with a child and 2 failed marriages, to make a living on her own. Therefore, the fact that Wang Kikyo was allowed to stay with her in-laws was considered her good fortune. For 7 years, Wang Kikyo endured humiliation. But in return, her daughter received an education and a family. This was enough for her to continue enduring. Realizing that Wang Kikyo had a clear motive, the police traveled over 20 kilometers to Jinko district to meet her. This was when Wang Kikyo learned about the incident at her in-laws' home. She was extremely distressed and worriedly asked about the family's condition. When she found out that her entire in-law family had died, Wang Kikyo collapsed, not crying or speaking, and simply invited the investigators inside. It turned out that 2 days before the fire, on February 10th, Wang Kikyo and Li Shiki had another argument. The cause was again a children's squabble. That afternoon, as usual, Wang Kikyo let her daughter Xiaoan 7 play with her nephew Xiaobao 4, the son of her sister-in-law Zhao Qingqing, in the front yard while she cooked in the kitchen. Somehow Xiaoan and Xiaobao started fighting over a grasshopper woven from leaves. In the end, Xiaoan got it, making Xiaobao cry. Hearing the noise, Li Shiki rushed out from the living room. Without assessing the situation, she saw her grandson crying and immediately hit Xiaoan hard on the bottom, causing her to cry loudly in pain. Seeing this, Wang Kikyo rushed out to stop her mother-in-law, who then accused her of not raising her child properly. She then chased both Wang Kikyo and her daughter back to her parents' home, even though it was getting dark. This back and forth had happened multiple times over the past 7 years. Knowing that her mother-in-law would soon calm down, Wang Kikyo complied. That evening, she asked a villager to take her and her daughter back to her parents' home, bringing only a few clothes and some cash. Wang Kikyo firmly stated that she had been in Jinko for the past 2 days. Her parents and neighbors could vouch for her. The journey from Jinko to Danta took over an hour by car. Not to mention the police found a 20-liter plastic gasoline can discard it 20 meters from the house. If Wang Kikyo were the perpetrator, carrying a 20-liter can over such a long distance would have surely drawn attention. So far, there was no concrete evidence against Wang Kikyo other than her possible motive. Returning to the crime scene once again, the police searched everywhere but found no unusual traces. All household items were burned, and valuables like gold necklaces were found intact in the house with everything still in its place, indicating no signs of theft. As previously mentioned, the police found a plastic gasoline can suspected to be left by the perpetrator. However, fingerprint analysis yielded nothing, suggesting the perpetrator wore gloves while carrying out their plan. The forensic team had completed their autopsy reports. Examination of the victims' stomachs revealed a significant amount of sleeping pills in the adult stomachs, except for the 4-year-old child. This was a crucial clue. Why was this significant? Because a 4-year-old in a rural area would typically eat the same food as the adults. So which dish was the sleeping pill in that the child didn't eat? After collecting and organizing all clues at the scene, the police came to several conclusions. First, the motive for this crime was undoubtedly revenge. The police needed to investigate the relationships between the family members and those around them to narrow down the suspect list. Second, the perpetrator was likely someone familiar and very close to the Zhao family. It's possible that they were present at the Zhao family's dinner on the evening of February 11th, quietly adding sleeping pills to the meal before setting the house on fire. Third, another hypothesis, though speculative, was that one of the victims might have committed arson and suicide. To validate this theory, the police needed to investigate the family members' relationships. After reaching a consensus, the investigation team quickly split into 2 groups and began their inquiries. Surprisingly, after investigating the Zhao family's relationships with their neighbors, the police found that Zhao Mayan and Li Shiki were not well liked. Zhao Mayan was known for his erratic temper, always thinking he was right, being domineering, and never getting along with anyone he met. His wife, Li Shiki, was equally problematic, being aggressive, gossipy, and frequently speaking ill of her daughters-in-law and sons-in-law. Their selfish behavior had caused numerous conflicts with neighbors, notably with Song Xiaobin. Song Xiaobin, a longtime neighbor, had turned from friend to foe over a dispute involving a cow eating Zhao Mayan's corn. According to neighbors, this incident happened over a year ago. Zhao Mayan, without informing Song Xiaobin, killed the cow and hosted a feast for the neighbors. When Song Xiaobin discovered what happened, Zhao Mayan not only refused to apologize, but also lectured him on being considerate and warned that this was just a threat. If Song Xiaobin didn't keep his animals in check, he wouldn't let it slide next time. The value of a cow to a farmer is significant, and losing it along with the insult from Zhao Mayan made Song Xiaobin furious. A few days later, he retaliated by throwing cow dung into Zhao Mayan's house. This led to another fierce argument, to the point where the village chief had to personally fund a tall fence to separate the 2 households. For over a year, the 2 sides clashed frequently. If they weren't arguing, they were fighting. The village chief was so exasperated that he eventually pretended not to notice their conflicts. Given this history, the police couldn't overlook Song Xiaobin. When approached, Song Xiaobin sighed and said, "I knew you'd suspect my family because we have the biggest grudge against him, but I swear I didn't do it. I genuinely hate the old man, but I wouldn't kill his entire family. Besides, how could I harm a 4-year-old child?" Indeed, this tragedy was incredibly sorrowful. A family of 5, including a 4-year-old child, was burned to death. Who could harbor such intense hatred against the Zhao family to commit such a heinous act? After verifying Song Xiaobin's whereabouts and activities, the police temporarily ruled him out as a suspect. On that evening, it was confirmed that he was at home after work with some distant relatives visiting. However, from Song Xiaobin, the police learned new information about the relationship between the Zhao Mayan family and their son-in-law, Ling Shixiao, 25, who was Zhao Qingqing's husband and one of the 5 victims of the fire. Considering the second and third hypotheses from the police, Ling Shixiao might be involved in the incident. Ling Shixiao was known to have the least influence in the family, even less than Wang Keqiao. This was because he was living with his in-laws. Ling Shixiao married Zhao Qingqing when she turned 18 because she was pregnant. Ling Shixiao had been frail since childhood and wasn't as strong as other men in the village, so his job was much lighter and his salary was equivalent to that of women. This inadequacy made Ling Shixiao despised by his in-laws, especially Zhao Mayan. During meals, Zhao Mayan and his wife, Li Shiki, often made disparaging remarks toward their son-in-law. Even Zhao Qingqing disrespected her husband and agreed with her parents. Gradually, Ling Shixiao lived like an invisible person in the house. He had no say in anything and had to seek his wife's permission for everything. To avoid his in-laws, Ling Shixiao worked outside all day and only returned home after dark. The only person who treated him with respect was his sister-in-law, Wang Keqiao. Perhaps because their fates in the Zhao household were similar, they empathized with each other. Seeing her husband becoming closer to her sister-in-law, Zhao Qingqing grew visibly upset. She urged her mother to discipline Wang Keqiao while she scolded her husband, demanding that he maintain proper boundaries. Although they were no longer outwardly close, they still quietly supported and helped each other. When the police asked about her relationship with Ling Shixiao, Wang Keqiao insisted that aside from mutual empathy, there were no other feelings involved. Based on these details, the police formed a hypothesis. Ling Shixiao felt humiliated and disrespected by his in-laws, which led him to plan the arson to kill the family, and then himself. However, he didn't want to implicate his sister-in-law, the only person who treated him with respect, so he waited until she and her daughter left the house to execute his plan. Ling Shixiao had both the motive and the opportunity. He could have spiked the food with sleeping pills when no one was watching. After everyone fell asleep, he set the house on fire, then took the pills and lay in the flames with them. Although this hypothesis aligned with the clues the police had gathered, they couldn't understand why he would choose to kill his own son. Ling Shixiao was known to be very loving towards his son, and didn't have a malicious or scheming nature. Even if he disliked his in-laws, the idea of harming his 4-year-old son was hard to accept. At this point, Li Run, 28, informed the police that he had seen Ling Shixiao outside his house at around 1 a.m. Li Run, a long-distance truck driver, was returning home on his motorcycle after work and passed by Zhao Mian's house. At that time, there was no sign of fire, but he saw Ling Shixiao standing outside. Li Ren thought Ling Shixiao was just out for a midnight bathroom break and didn't pay much attention, quickly heading home to rest. If this sighting was accurate, it further implicated Ling Shixiao as a suspect. Typically, those who grew up in rural areas understand that people in rural China often have early dinners, around 6 to 7 p.m., sometimes even earlier, and go to bed between 8 and 10 p.m. If the perpetrator drugged the victims and they followed this routine, the effects of the sleeping pills would still be active by 1 to 2 a.m. Ling Shixiao being awake and outside at this hour was suspicious, suggesting he hadn't taken the pills. This observation lent credibility to the police's hypothesis. Finally, after many days of investigation, the police decided to close the case. The perpetrator was concluded to be Ling Shixiao, with the motive being revenge for the disdain from his in-laws. It seemed the case could finally be put to rest, but some investigators disagreed with this conclusion. They believed the evidence was insufficient, and, given that they couldn't get a statement from this particular suspect, they decided to continue monitoring the case for a while. On February 24th, the police returned to the scene with sniffer dogs, hoping to find any overlooked clues in the rubble. However, despite their efforts, they found nothing but ashes and charred metal. At that moment, Mrs. Zhang, who had discovered the fire, saw them and spoke up. "Still investigating? I thought the case was closed. You guys are really diligent. If you need any help, just let us know. Everyone's been working hard searching these past few days." The police were surprised by Mrs. Zhang's comment, because they had just returned to the scene today. Who else had been there investigating? They asked Mrs. Zhang about this, and she revealed that Wang Keqiao had been coming to the site repeatedly over the past 2 days. The case was nearly 2 weeks old by then, with the investigation mostly concluded. So why was Wang Keqiao returning? Was she hiding something from the police? This prompted a discreet investigation into Wang Keqiao. Initially, the police believed it would be difficult for Wang Keqiao to act given the 20-kilometer distance between Jinko and Dantu. She couldn't ride a motorcycle, and traveling with a 20-liter gasoline can would certainly draw attention if she were with someone else. Yet, her recent behavior raised the police's suspicions once more. In an unexpected turn, during their quiet investigation, they found a witness indicating that Wang Keqiao had indeed left Jinko late. On February 11th, Mr. Zhou, 41, a fellow villager of Wang Keqiao's family, reported that around 1 a.m. on February 12th, saw a woman on a motorcycle leaving the village. Her build and clothing closely resembled Wang Keqiao's. He knew she couldn't ride a motorcycle, so he thought he might have been mistaken, especially since it was dark and he was a bit tipsy. To verify, the police visited Wang Keqiao's home and saw her father's motorcycle matched Mr. Zhou's description. It was clear that her family knew something. Using their professional experience, the investigators posed some indirect questions, making Wang Keqiao's parents avoid eye contact. The police's suspicions grew stronger. They decided to confront Wang Keqiao directly. To their astonishment, upon meeting them, Wang Keqiao immediately confessed to the crime. However, when she explained her motive, the police were left speechless, unsure how to respond. According to Wang Keqiao, after she gave birth to Xiao Huan, her in-laws increasingly mistreated her. They didn't treat her as they claimed to others. Her mother-in-law, Li Shiki, forced her to go out to work just 3 days after giving birth. The lack of nutritious food meant she had no milk for her baby. When she asked to borrow milk from the neighbors, Li Shiki slapped her, calling her useless and irresponsible as a mother. She also refused to let her borrow milk, fearing it would tarnish their reputation. During that time, her daughter could only drink rice water. Sometimes, Wang Keqiao managed to secretly get some milk from other neighbors. Later, when her sister-in-law got married, Zhao Mayan and his wife took all the money Wang Keqiao had saved for her daughter to give to Zhao Qingqing. They treated her like a servant. She had to wake up first to prepare breakfast, then work in the fields. At noon, she had to rush back to cook for her father-in-law, and then return to the fields in the afternoon. At night, she was the last to sleep after finishing all the chores. Wang Keqiao tried to endure this for her daughter's sake, but Zhao Mayan wouldn't leave her in peace. In July 1995, she vividly remembered coming home at noon to prepare lunch for her father-in-law. Her daughter had just eaten and gone to sleep, and everyone else was out. She and Zhao Mayan were the only ones at home. After finishing lunch, Wang Keqiao went to the bathroom to wash off the morning's sweat and grime. She suddenly felt like someone was watching her. She turned to see Zhao Mayan staring at her with a predatory look. When he saw her notice him, he brazenly opened the bathroom door and stepped in with a satisfied look. Wang Keqiao, terrified, clutched herself and begged him to leave. But he ignored her, saying that since his son couldn't enjoy her, he would take his place. His disgusting words and actions left her paralyzed with fear. That afternoon, she became prey to her vile father-in-law. Once it happened, it kept happening. Whenever Zhao Mayan had the urge or opportunity, he assaulted Wang Keqiao. Even worse, this happened so frequently that both Li Shiki and Zhao Qingqing caught them in the act, but they said nothing. Li Shiki believed Wang Keqiao seduced her husband, intensifying her hatred. She poured hot water on her, leaving scars, and put nails in her shoes. Despite knowing everything her mother-in-law did, Wang Keqiao couldn't resist. Living in the same house, her sister-in-law Zhao Qingqing also despised her, often making things difficult, cutting her long hair to sell for money, and beating her daughter whenever she made her son cry. Many times Wang Keqiao wanted to end her life or leave, but she had nowhere to go and worried about her daughter's future. She felt she had to stay, but her endurance became a curse for her daughter. During the Lunar New Year in 1998, an unforgivable incident happened. On the 30th night, Wang Keqiao had to brave the cold to buy fireworks and supplies for the holiday. When she returned, she heard her daughter screaming. She dropped everything and ran to her room to find her father-in-law on top of her daughter. Xiao Huan was crying for her mother, her clothes torn, begging her grandfather to stop. Wang Keqiao couldn't contain herself and pushed Zhao Mayan off. Drunk, he tried to attack her. Hearing the commotion, Li Shiki rushed in and slapped Wang Keqiao, demanding she apologize to her father-in-law, which she refused. It was clear that Li Shiki knew what had happened, but chose to protect her husband. Meanwhile, Zhao Qingqing forced her husband Ling Shishao to stay in their room and not help. Seeing the hypocritical faces of her in-laws and her daughter crying in pain, Wang Keqiao couldn't bear it any longer. She took her daughter and walked over 20 kilometers in the cold to her parents' house. To avoid any rumors that might tarnish their reputation, Li Shiki went to Wang Keqiao's parents' house the next morning, using sweet words and threats to bring Wang Keqiao and her daughter back. Because her daughter was about to start school and needed paperwork, Wang Keqiao reluctantly returned, but she didn't expect that just a month later, the same thing would happen again. This time, Wang Keqiao couldn't take it anymore. She vowed to make the Zhao family pay for everything she had endured over the past 7 years. Thus, Wang Keqiao started planning to kill her in-laws from February 2nd. Each day, she bought a little gasoline from the store and poured it into a can she had prepared and hidden in the kitchen. She knew no one in her in-laws' family ever bothered to clean the kitchen, so she wasn't afraid of being discovered. During this time, she secretly learned to ride a motorcycle, which later became her alibi. By February 10th, she started picking fights with her mother-in-law, getting herself sent back to her parents' house. This way, she could safely take her daughter and establish a perfect alibi. Early on February 11th, returned to her in-laws' house. Familiar with the place, sneaking in was easy. She knew the family had a habit of drinking ginger tea every evening, so she mixed sleeping pills into the tea and sugar jars. However, Ling Shixiao caught her sneaking around in the kitchen. Wang Keqiao didn't hide her plan from him, telling him she would set the house on fire the next night, and advised him not to drink the tea. She told him to take his son and leave the house by that time. The next day, Wang Keqiao returned as she had planned. As for Ling Shixiao, he probably didn't drink the tea with the family that night. However, as he neared death, he chose to stay with his wife and child in the house he despised by drinking the tea with the sleeping pills. When Wang Keqiao arrived, she thought Ling Shixiao had left as instructed, so she set the fire. It wasn't until she first spoke with the police that she learned Ling Shixiao had chosen to stay in the flames with his in-laws. Perhaps when Wang Keqiao bowed her head in sadness, it wasn't out of remorse or to deceive the police, but because she was contemplating why Ling Shixiao made such a choice. In the end, the case was resolved. Wang Keqiao showed no remorse in court. Her regret was not giving her daughter a happy life and failing to protect her all those years. Before her execution, Wang Keqiao asked her parents to take care of her daughter. She also told her daughter, no matter what, never to live a life like hers. Wang Keqiao's words moved many people. Everyone wants to be a good role model for their children. But what kind of terrible life did this mother endure to beg her daughter not to live as she did? This case has much to discuss, but it's hard to criticize any one individual because everyone involved had their faults. Despite the wrong actions of the perpetrator as a mother, it's hard to imagine anyone enduring what she and her child went through. Story 3. In early 2013, a murder case in the Bali district of Taiwan shocked the media and public for an extended period. The incident not only drew attention because of the brutal nature of the crime, but also because the victim was an elderly billionaire family. You may have heard of this case before or are just now learning about it, but what are the details of the case? Who is the perpetrator? What was their motive? On February 26, 2013, a woman named Mo Yun was walking along the Tamsui River area when she stumbled upon a strange object lying near the edge of the mangrove forest. Due to her poor eyesight in the distance, she couldn't clearly see what the object was, only that it was quite large. Curious, she decided to get closer. As she approached, she kept rubbing her eyes to get a clearer view of the object below the bank. Only when she got a clearer look did she fall back in shock and scream, drawing the attention of those nearby. A man quickly ran towards the sound of the scream. Mo Yun, trembling, pointed towards the distance and shakily said, "There's a body over there." Understanding the situation, the man quickly called the police and asked others to calm the woman. Within 10 minutes, the police arrived and secured the scene. Upon seeing the body, one officer exclaimed, "Isn't this Mr. Chen Jinfu who was reported missing a few days ago?" The whole team was stunned because just a few days earlier, the victim's family had reported him missing. The police had not found any information yet, and now received news of his death. Despite the body being swollen, the facial features were still recognizable. The police then called Mr. Chen's family to inform them. A preliminary investigation revealed that the victim was found at the edge of the mangrove forest beside the Tamsui River. Nearby was a trail where locals often walked or biked. It was possible that the victim had an accident and fell into the Tamsui River, with the body drifting to the shore as the tide receded, exposing it on the mangrove forest floor. At first glance, the police noticed Mr. Chen's body was swollen with many injuries on his body and neck. However, it was difficult to determine with the naked eye whether the injuries were caused by a weapon or environmental factors. The Tamsui River had many sharp rocks beneath its surface, and the mangrove shore had many protruding roots, which could have caused these injuries as the body drifted. Additionally, since the body had been in the water for some time, the wounds were severely decomposed, making it hard to assess them visually. After examining the body, the police noted that the victim's clothes were still relatively new and neatly dressed, suggesting he was on his way to an important event before his death. The victim was not carrying many valuables, still wearing a gold-plated watch on his wrist, and his shoes were still on, making it unlikely he was attacked for money, but rather suggesting an accident. The police also divided themselves to search the area under the river and near the shore, but did not find anything else. More and more local residents gathered around, which somewhat hindered the police's search process. From all the information gathered so far, the police could initially conclude that Mr. Chen Jinfu had fallen into the water after slipping on the easily slippery terrain. After bringing the body back to the examination department, Mr. Chen's family quickly arrived. Upon seeing the police, they immediately asked about the whereabouts of Mrs. Zhang Kuiping, Mr. Chen Jinfu's wife. It turned out that besides Mr. Chun, his wife had also gone missing from the evening of February 16th. At this time, the investigation team was questioning local residents when they received unexpected information. On the night of February 25th, one day before Mr. Chin Jinfu's body was found, a witness reported seeing two people burning paper money by the Tam Sui River. However, since burning joss paper for the deceased is not unusual in Taiwan, the witness did not approach them and went straight home. The police immediately sought information about these two strange individuals by checking the surrounding area's cameras. However, because it was dark and the mangrove area along the river lacked surveillance cameras, and the residential area cameras did not cover that direction, no information could be found. Despite this, the police remained determined to search by asking local residents if they had seen anyone suspicious that night. In addition to investigating Chen Jinfu's death, the police were under pressure to find Zhang Kuiping. Until now, they still did not know whether Zhang Kuiping was alive or not. Therefore, they divided the investigation team into two smaller groups, one to search for information about Zhang Kuiping, and the other to continue investigating Mr. Chen's case. The next day, the police received information that a woman tried to withdraw money from Zhang Kuiping's bank account at a bank in Zhonghua County, but failed due to incorrect password entry. She then attempted to withdraw money at the counter, but was refused by the staff as she appeared much younger than the profile information. At this point, two opinions began to form within the investigation team. Some suspected that Zhang Kuiping could be the mastermind, having dealt with her husband, and then sent someone disguised as herself to withdraw money to mislead the police. Others believed that both victims were murdered, with the motive likely being to seize their assets. This latter motive was widely supported, including by the victim's family. Do you know why most people agreed with the second theory? Let's take a break from the investigation to learn about the background of Mr. Chen Jinfu and his wife. After hearing this, you might guess something. Mr. Chen Jinfu, born in 1934, was a wealthy businessman who once taught at Takashoka University in Japan. He owned two uninhabited islands in Okinawa, Japan, and numerous properties worth tens of millions of Taiwanese dollars. His wife, Mrs. Jean Kuoping, born in 1956, was an associate professor at Churchian University, owning jewelry worth 40 million Taiwanese dollars, equivalent to 1.2 million US dollars. The couple currently lived in a villa in Bali District, New Taipei City. Regarding family matters, Mr. Chin Jinfu and his wife had no children, but their relatives and nieces and nephews were very attentive to them. The couple, being elderly, would spend their time traveling together, visiting nearby coffee shops, or attending various parties besides their work. This shows that there was no conceivable reason for Zhang Kuiping to harm Mr. since February 27th, when the mysterious woman attempted to withdraw money using Zhang Kuiping's bank card. The police divided into smaller groups to investigate the surrounding area's cameras, but still found no leads. However, the team investigating the social relationships of the couple received new information from a distant relative of Mr. Chin. It was revealed that after accumulating a massive fortune, Mr. Chin decided to retire, sell his stores and house in Japan, and live a secluded life with his wife in a small villa by the Tam Sui River in Bali District, Taiwan. This area is also where the two victims' bodies were discovered. The relative noted that the couple frequently visited a nearby coffee shop for drinks, mainly because it was the only coffee shop in the area. This person also mentioned that Mr. Chun had shared that the couple had long adopted a girl who worked at this coffee shop. Armed with this crucial information, the police immediately visited the mentioned coffee shop. The coffee shop, named Momo Coffee, was located below Mr. Chun Jinfu's villa, only about 130 meters from where Mr. Chen's body was found. The first person the police met was the store manager, Xia Yihan, born in 1985. Mrs. Yihan explained that Mr. Chun had been a regular customer since 2009, often visiting with his wife. The girl the couple adopted was her. Yihan then sat down and recounted the details to the police. She said she started working there in late September 2008. In 2009, she met Mr. Chin and Zhang Guiping. As they were regular customers, Yihan often chatted with them. One day, they asked about her family. Mr. Chin learned that she was under significant financial pressure due to her father's early death, her sister studying abroad, and her mother working alone in Kaohsiung. Because of this, he offered to adopt Yihan as his daughter. From 2010, Mr. Chin regularly provided financial support, gave jewelry to Yihan, and guided her in stock investments, making her very grateful to the couple. The last time the couple visited the coffee shop was on February 16th, Ihan said. She found it odd that Mr. Chun hadn't visited the shop for several days afterward. Assuming they were traveling, she didn't want to bother them at home. Recently, Ihan had been busy preparing for her wedding, so she didn't have time to call the couple. The police also inquired about other relationships Mr. Chun Jin-fu might have had and the coffee shop employees. They asked if anyone else was close to the couple. Jia-han responded that because most employees were new, few were familiar with Mr. The people who knew and frequently talked with the victims were Lu Bingheng, the owner of Momo Coffee, and two shareholders, Oh Shiqing and Zhong Jianfen. However, compared to the others, owner Lu Bingheng was closer to Mr. Chin. Immediately, Lu Bingheng was summoned by the police for questioning. Upon seeing the police, Mr. Bingheng said, "If you want information about Mr. Chin Jin-fu and his wife, you should ask Jia-han. She knows more." It seemed that the relationship between Jia-han and the couple was very close, to the point of causing jealousy among others. The police then interviewed every employee at the coffee shop, but failed to obtain any useful information. At this point, an officer stepping outside noticed a camera that could capture the entrance to the coffee shop. The police quickly contacted the camera's owner and requested the footage. On February 16th, the footage showed Mr. Chin Jin-fu and his wife indeed visiting Momo Coffee. However, there was no footage of them leaving. The police then questioned the employees present at the coffee shop that day, including Jia-han's fiancée, Zhu Yifeng, and other acquaintances of the couple. But all they received were responses like, "I don't know." Some said they had to leave early. Others said they were too busy to notice when Mr. Chun and Zhang Yiping left the shop. This only heightened the suspicions about those present. To avoid alerting the suspects, the police began quietly monitoring and observing all employees at Momo Coffee. However, they overlooked one factor. The media was also very interested in this case. The media continuously approached and tried to extract information from the suspects. You might be curious about Zhang Yiping's whereabouts by now, right? Is Zhang Yiping still alive? Where was she while news of her husband's death was everywhere? These questions were also troubling the investigation team at that time. On March 2nd, as the police continued their investigation along the Tam Sui River, the unanswered questions finally found answers. While the search team scoured the river area and the mangrove forest edge, an officer searching the swampy area near the bike path on the left bank of the Tam Sui River unexpectedly discovered a woman's body. The police quickly gathered at the scene. Even before anyone could check, it seemed everyone already knew the answer. Soon after, the forensic doctors confirmed that the body was indeed Zhang Yiping. On the same day, the police received a report from Shenzhen University that a female student had found Zhang Guiping's wallet in the women's restroom at the university. Unfortunately for the perpetrator, their attempt to mislead the police had failed. At this point, the employees at Momo Coffee remained the suspects. There were a total of 11 people, including 6 store employees and Ihan's boyfriend. The store owner and 2 shareholders had also been interrogated. On March 3rd, the police searched the store and found 3 drops of blood in the kitchen. It was noted that Zhang Yiping's body had 2 stab wounds on the neck, leading the investigation team to believe the case was far from simple. After the autopsy on March 4th, forensic experts determined that the couple had died after falling into the water and had puncture wounds in their chests. Zhang Yiping had several 6 centimeters deep stab wounds in her back and a 6 centimeters deep wound in her lung. There were also 2 open wounds on her neck. Thus, the injuries on Mr. Chun, initially thought to be caused by underwater objects, were likely inflicted by the perpetrator. Additionally, forensic examination found a residual amount of anesthetic in the stomachs of both victims, indicating they had been drugged and then attacked while incapacitated before being dumped into the Tam Sui River. However, the police still could not identify the perpetrator. The only certainty was that the culprit was among the 11 people at Momo Coffee. To avoid any investigative misdirection, the police continually questioned and examined the recent activities of each individual. First was the adopted daughter, Jia-han. As initially stated to the police, Ihan and her fiancé, Zhu Yifeng, were planning their wedding. Ihan had been financially supported by the Chun couple for over 3 years. Despite the assistance, she did not take it for granted and worked hard, earning Mr. Chen's increasing affection. Given her imminent wedding, it was hard to believe she had the motive to commit murder. Furthermore, during questioning, Ihan remained calm and provided detailed answers to the police's questions. She supplied extensive information and expressed her desire for the police to quickly find the murderer of her foster parents. The second group of suspects were the store owner, Lu Bingheng, and the two shareholders, Asher Chung and Zhong Jianfeng. During questioning, Jia Ihan provided the police with a suspicious detail. The three were planning to invest in a new store despite Momo Coffee's thriving business. After hearing the police's suspicions, Lu Bingheng admitted that he had asked to borrow money from Mr. Chen Jinfu. However, since it was a significant amount, Mr. Chen initially refused, but mentioned he would reconsider. Additionally, on the day Mr. and Mrs. Chun went missing, all three individuals had alibis. The remaining coffee shop employees were also questioned by the police, but since they were not close to the victims, no useful information could be obtained. Without any solid evidence, the police could not detain them and eventually had to release everyone under the investigators' supervision. As mentioned earlier, this case also attracted significant media attention. Even before the police could investigate further, the media had caught wind of the case. They conducted interviews in and around the coffee shop. Reporters asked questions to the store manager, Jaehan, who calmly responded. A reporter asked, "What did they usually do when they came here?" Ihan replied, "Just drink coffee and walk by the river." The reporter continued, "Did they have any arguments when they left that day?" Ihan answered, "No, they didn't." As you can see, cases involving media attention often create additional pressure on the police investigation, right? Given the timeline's complexity, I'll summarize the key events again to avoid confusion. On the evening of February 16, 2013, Chen Jingfu and Zhang Yiping went to Momo Coffee in Bali for drinks and then disappeared. On February 20th, their family reported them missing to the police. On the night of February 25th, the day before Qin Jinfu's body was discovered, witnesses reported seeing two people burning joss paper by the Tam Sui River. On February 26th, the wealthy businessman Qin Jinfu's body was found by the Tam Sui River in Bali, 130 meters from the coffee shop. Initially, the police concluded he had fallen into the water after slipping. On February 27th, after the incident with Mr. Chen Jinfu, a woman impersonating Zhang Guiping attempted to withdraw money, using her bank card at Zhonghua Bank, but failed due to incorrect password entry. On March 2nd, Zhang Guiping's body was found by the Tam Sui River in Bali District, New Taipei City. That same day, her wallet was discovered in the women's restroom at Shenzhen University. The police then determined that the perpetrator was deliberately trying to mislead the investigation. On March 3rd, the police searched Momo Coffee and found 3 drops of blood in the store's kitchen. Without lab results, they couldn't determine who the blood belonged to. On March 4th, the prosecutors conducted autopsies and discovered deep wounds on the neck and chest. There were no signs of water in the victims' airways, indicating they had died before being thrown into the river. So far, the police have narrowed down the suspects but lack conclusive evidence. Who do you think the perpetrator could be? Xia Yihan, her boyfriend Zhu Yifeng, Lu Bingheng, O Xiuqing, Zhong Jianfeng, or one of the 6 employees who the police least suspect? At around 4 a.m. on March 6th, a reporter from Liberty Times visited the coffee shop for an interview and happened to see O Xiuqing and Zhong Jianfeng cleaning up the baking room and storage late at night. Curious, the reporter approached them, but they only said they were cleaning up trash. Later that day, a bank employee from Zhonghua County went to the police station and said that the woman suspected by the media looked very similar to the woman who tried to withdraw money the previous day. The police quickly showed her photos of the female employees at the coffee shop. She immediately pointed to a picture of a young woman. It was none other than Xie Yihan. Combining the bank employee's information and the reporter's account, the police were certain that Xie Yihan was the perpetrator and suspected O Xiuqing and Zhong Jianfeng of colluding to destroy evidence. On the afternoon of March 6th, the police arrived at the coffee shop to arrest Xia Yihang. Despite the police's suspicions and evidence, Xia Yihang insisted she had nothing to do with the case. She repeatedly expressed her gratitude towards Mr. Chen Jinfu and his wife, and maintained that she had no motive to harm them. Seeing their trusted manager being arrested for questioning, owner Lu Bingheng, who was auditing accounts at the time, found it hard to believe. He doubted the police's lead and remarked to his wife, "Could this be a mistake?" Little did he know, he would soon find himself caught in the storm as well. At the police station, CIA Han steadfastly denied the charges. The police, unconvinced by her strong defense, showed her the autopsy photos of the victims. The sight of the photos broke her composure. She vomited, cried, and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." After calming down, Xia Yihang confessed everything. She admitted that Mr. Chen frequently visited the coffee shop and intended to adopt her. Recently, Lu Bingheng faced financial difficulties and, knowing the Chen couple's wealth, conspired with shareholders Zhou Shiqing and Zhong Jianfeng to commit the crime. Yihang confessed that Lu Bingheng was the mastermind, and she agreed to the plan for a large sum of money. Aware that Zhang Yiping always carried bank cards, savings books and seals, Yihang lured the Qin couple to the shop on the night of February 16th. She spiked their drinks with a sedative and, as Zhang Guiping was about to lose consciousness, forced her into a car to demand her bank card's PIN. When Zhang Guiping resisted, Yihang killed her. Lu Bingheng and the others then took the bodies to Zhong Jianfeng's rented house. After the family reported the couple missing and the police began searching, the four conspirators decided to dispose of the bodies by dumping them along the riverbank. About 130 meters from the coffee shop, on February 26th and March 2nd, 2013. At 4 a.m. on March 7th, just after Lu Bingheng finished auditing the books and opened the store, he was greeted by a barrage of flashing lights. Reporters repeatedly asked, "Why did you kill Chen Jinfu and his wife?" Shortly afterward, Lu Bingheng was taken away by the police. He entered the police station without knowing what lay ahead. Lu Bingheng greeted the shareholders who were also in custody, only to be scolded by the police for potentially conspiring to confess. The police then arranged for Bingheng to meet directly with Xia Yihang, but she could not bring herself to look him in the eye. Outside the police station, the front page of that day's newspaper was filled with news of Xia Yihang's confession. She claimed that the death of Mr. and Mrs. Chen Jinfu was due to the owner's greed. While she admitted to committing murder, she insisted she was merely a pawn. There was also information suggesting that, feeling guilty, Xia Yihang had gone to the riverbank to burn something for the deceased. Do you remember that a day before Mr. Chen's body was found, someone was seen burning joss paper? When the police visited the joss paper shop mentioned in Xia Yihang's confession, the shop owner confirmed her statement, adding that a man accompanied Xia Yihang that day, and that man was Lu Bingheng. The witness testimonies were quickly verified. Additionally, on that day, Lu Bingheng and the other two had their mobile phones turned off for an extended period. Both the police and the media believed Xia Yihang's story, thinking it unlikely that a like her could have overpowered two people simultaneously. As there was no direct evidence, the Taiwanese media fueled the fire, portraying the three owners as the main culprits. Suddenly, Lu Bingheng and his family were left in shock, going from cooperating with the investigation to becoming prime suspects. You must understand that the accusations against Lu Bingheng, Zhong Jianfeng, and Zhou Shiqing were solely based on Xia Yihang's testimony, with no concrete evidence. To find proof, the police searched for surveillance cameras around the area. However, no surveillance footage showed Lu Bingheng and the others burning joss paper, nor were there any traces of weapons or blood-stained clothing found in or around the coffee shop. Unexpectedly, the very next day, Xia Yihang retracted her confession, claiming her initial statement was false and that the police had forced her to confess. At that moment, Lu Bingheng and the other two were released on bail and soon regained their freedom. Upon returning home, Lu Bingheng still felt like a sudden suspect. He used the coffee shop's social media account to explain the situation, only to receive thousands of abusive comments from netizens. To prove his innocence as soon as possible, Lu Bingheng decided not to wait for the police to verify the facts. He retrieved the surveillance footage from the coffee shop to uncover the truth. Upon reviewing the footage, they indeed saw Xia Yihang meeting the two victims that night. After returning to the shop, Lu Bingheng also found a necklace and a pearl ring in Xia Yihang's desk. He immediately took pictures and sent them to Zhang Guiping's family, who confirmed that the jewelry belonged to the victim. On April 2nd, Lu Bingheng submitted the information he had gathered to the police, and finally, the three of them were cleared from the list of suspects. As for Xia Yihang, she was prosecuted on April 12th on 5 criminal charges: robbery and murder, fraudulent appropriation of property, theft causing injury, and perjury. After failing to pin the blame on the three men, Yihang continued to change her statements. In her third account, Yihang claimed that Mr. Chen offered her 6 million Taiwanese dollars, equivalent to 185,000 US dollars, and a house to kill his wife. Then, she said she was in a romantic relationship with him, and he wanted to kill his wife, so he asked for her help. She initially only wanted to rob Zhang Tsuaping, but was incited by Mr. Chen to commit murder. Finally, Ihan claimed she wanted to escape Mr. Chen's harassment and marry her boyfriend, so she pretended to cooperate with him to kill his wife, and then planned to kill both of them. Xia Ihan began to detail her relationship with the victim. She said that Qin Jinfu did not use a mobile phone, but only a landline. When he wanted to meet her, he would either speak to her directly or visit the store. They arranged to meet at 1 or 2 in the morning and later, even earlier. After waiting for his wife to fall asleep, Chen Jinfu would go to meet Ihang. She had to lie to her boyfriend, saying she needed to sleep early. Ihang stated that after each encounter, Chen Jinfu would give her red envelopes containing tens of thousands of Taiwanese dollars. Additionally, he gave her jewelry, such as jade pendants or pearl necklaces. Xia Ihang said that as she prepared to marry her boyfriend, she decided to end her illicit relationship with Qin Jinfu and told Zhang Tsuaping about it. However, Zhang Tsuaping seemed indifferent to the news. After that, Qin Jinfu said he had a poor relationship with his wife, Zhang Tsuaping, and wanted to regain financial control of the family. Some time ago, Mr. Chen asked her to kill Zhang Tsuaping, promising, "I will buy a house and give you 6 million Taiwanese dollars in cash." Xia Yihang continued, saying that neither her mother nor her boyfriend knew about her with Mr. Chen. She wanted to end it, but Zhang Tsuaping was indifferent. Moreover, if she only killed Mr. Chen, Zhang Tsuaping would know she was the culprit, so Yihang's plan was to kill both of them. Yihang emphasized that she chose the stupidest way to resolve the situation, to sever the inappropriate relationship between her and Mr. Chen. The prosecution later confirmed that Ihan and Mr. Chen had a close relationship, but found no evidence of a romantic affair. After all her false statements, Xia Ihan finally confessed to the crime. The story began in October 2012. One day in October, Xia Ihan went to a pharmacy below her apartment and said that her mother had passed away. She did not get along with her stepfather. They often argued, and she was so distressed that she couldn't sleep. She was prescribed sleeping pills. Xia Yihang returned to the pharmacy a second time and was given 21 sleeping pills. Besides the sleeping pills, after learning that Zhang Tsuaping stored jewelry worth 40 million Taiwanese dollars in a safe deposit box at the new Taipei City Farmers Association, Xia Yihang rented a safe deposit box from the association just to see what the key looked like. A week before the crime, Xia Yihang visited Chen Jinfu's house and tested the effects of the sleeping pills on him. She gave Mr. Chen water with sleeping pills and waited for him to fall asleep before searching for Zhang Tsuaping's safe deposit box, but her search was unsuccessful. Xia Yihang had no choice but to leave Mr. Chen's house. In early February 2013, unable to find the safe deposit box key, Xia Yihang signed up for Zhang Tsuaping's yoga class and adjusted her schedule to avoid clashing with Zhang Tsuaping's class. This made it easier for her to search Zhang Tsuaping's bag for the safe deposit key. As she hoped, Xia Yihang succeeded this time. She obtained the key to the Farmers Association's safe deposit center, but the transaction officer refused to open the box without proper identification. On February 16th, after several failed attempts to rob the Qin couple, Xia Yihang decided to see it through to the end. On that day, she invited Mr. and Mrs. Qin Jinfu to the coffee shop to celebrate Lu Bingheng's youngest son's first birthday. At 7:15 p.m. that evening, the Chen couple arrived to find no preparations for a birthday party. Upon asking the owner, they learned the party was scheduled for the following week. To apologize, Lu Bingheng offered them 2 cans of homemade beer and excused himself. Xia Yihan also served them drinks and invited the couple to sit down. By 7:30 p.m., Zhang Tsuaping began to feel dizzy. Mr. Chen, noticing his wife's condition, asked Yihan to help take her home to rest. At 8:30 p.m., Mr. Chin seemed overly intoxicated, and Yihan again helped him leave the coffee shop. Both times, Yihan took them out through the back door, so the police did not see the couple leaving the coffee shop on the front cameras. Instead of taking them home, she led them to the mangrove forest by the Tamsui River. As the tide was about to rise, Yihan initially planned to leave the unconscious couple by the riverbank before the tide came in, allowing the rising water to drown them and make it look like they had fallen into the river. Unexpectedly, Chen Jinfu woke up early due to an insufficient dose of sleeping pills and weakly asked what Yihan was doing. Realizing her plan was exposed, Yihang grabbed a fruit knife she had prepared and attacked Mr. Chen multiple times, covering his mouth to prevent him from screaming. After Mr. Chen died, Yihang turned to Zhang Tzu, aping with the knife, using the same method to stab her in the neck and chest until she stopped breathing. Yihang then dragged both bodies to the river, allowing the rising tide to submerge them, leaving the scene with Zhang Tzu-aping's wallet. Covered in mud and blood, she changed into a spare set of clothes she had prepared in the staff room. When the staff on duty arrived, she explained, "I accidentally fell into the river while dumping coffee grounds." The next day, Jihan, eager to complete the plan, wore a wig, dressed in Zhang Tzu-aping's clothes, and applied makeup to look older. She took Zhang Tzu-aping's bank card and ID to the counter to withdraw money, stealing 350,000 Taiwanese dollars, equivalent to over 10,000 US dollars. Once the real perpetrator was identified, reconstructing the case became straightforward. Many witnesses, including Yihan's yoga instructor, the taxi driver who took her to the bank, and the bank clerk who handled the transaction, provided a complete chain of evidence. Since her arrest in March 2013, Ji Yihan had given 4 different confessions. Initially, she blamed the owners, claiming she was merely following orders. Then, she stated that neither she nor the owners were involved, and that the police coerced her into giving a false confession. On April 15th, she changed her story again, saying Mr. Chen wanted to kill Zhang Tzu-aping, and she killed both of them to escape her illicit relationship with him. Finally, at her trial on May 21st, she changed her testimony once more, claiming she acted alone but indeed had a romantic relationship with Qin Jinfu. To prove their closeness, she described physical features of Qin Jinfu, such as freckles on his back and arms, white chest hair, and a scar on his thigh. However, the report showed Qin Jinfu had no such scars. As for the freckles, they are common in older adults and could not be used as evidence of a close relationship. In the end, Jihan's confession was deemed baseless and unreliable. In October 2013, Jihan was sentenced to death for robbery and murder. Upon hearing the word death from the judge, Jerihan, initially calm, broke down crying, saying she did not expect such a severe punishment. She said, "If there is a hell, I am willing to go there to atone for my sins." So the case concluded with the real perpetrator facing appropriate punishment. However, rumors and debates about the suspects persisted. Some even believed Jerihan's boyfriend was involved. Over time, these controversies faded, and the case gradually disappeared from public attention. Story 4. People are not born evil. Whether someone turns out good or bad largely depends on how they manage their own ego. Additionally, it is influenced by the surrounding environment. Many individuals are inherently good, but may find themselves in trouble due to a moment of impulsiveness or lack of thought, leading to irreversible mistakes. At around 7 a.m. on May 2, 2011, Mrs. Chung, the mother of Zhu Zixiang, the local tax bureau chief of District 8 in Huzhou City, Guangxi Province, China, went to invite her son's family to a wedding banquet at a restaurant. Upon arrival, Mrs. Chung stood outside ringing the doorbell for a long time, but no one answered. She then called her son, Zhu Zixiang, but although there was no response. She tried calling the landline, but again, no one answered. Mrs. Chung assumed that the family had stayed up late the previous night and was sleeping in, so she decided to go ahead, confident that her son's family would follow later. Surprisingly, only the housekeeper, Little Wang, showed up, and there was still no sign of Zhu Zixiang's family. As all the guests took their seats, Mrs. Chung grew uneasy and approached the housekeeper to inquire. Little Wang explained that she had slept in an upstairs room the previous night. This morning, when she went downstairs, she noticed the curtains on the 4th floor were still drawn. She knocked on the door but heard no response. Assuming the family had already left for the banquet, Wang also headed out. Hearing this, Mrs. Chung became extremely anxious and called her son again, but still received no answer. As the wedding reception was about to end, and still with no sign of her son's family, Mrs. Chung grew increasingly worried. She immediately took a taxi with Wang to check on the situation at home. The house was eerily quiet. Negative thoughts began to flood Mrs. Cheng's mind as she urged the housekeeper to quickly open the door. Once inside, Mrs. Chung rushed to the 4th floor. She found the door slightly ajar and pushed it open, only to see her son lying motionless on the bed, covered in blood. Overcome with fear, Mrs. Chung screamed and then collapsed from a heart attack. Hearing the commotion, Little Wang rushed upstairs. The scene left her in shock. Struggling to stay calm, She helped Mrs. Chung and called the police and an ambulance. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the authorities. The police reassured her and asked for details. They learned from the housekeeper that a murder had occurred at Zhu Zixiang's residence. Recognizing the severity of the case involving a government official, the police quickly dispatched a 5-member investigation team to Zhu Zixiang's home. When the investigation team arrived, medical personnel had already placed Mrs. Chung, Zhu Zixiang's mother, in an ambulance to be taken to the hospital. The crime scene was identified as 2 rooms on the 4th floor of the villa. Upon entering the scene, all the investigators were shocked by what they saw. The police immediately set up a barrier to seal off the entrance to Zhu Zixiang's home. Both Mr. and Mrs. Zixiang were found dead in the bedroom on the 4th floor. Zhu Zixiang had 2 deep wounds, one on his neck and another on his abdomen. The once relatively new white tank top he was wearing was now soaked with blood. His head remained on the pillow, indicating that he had been attacked and killed while still asleep, without any chance to defend himself. Based on the depth of the wounds, the police determined that the murder weapon was likely a dagger or a folding knife with a blade about 20 centimeters long. His wife, Ling Xiaoyan, was found dead in a corner of the room. She had been attacked on the head and chest. The head wound was likely caused by a blunt object, possibly a hammer. The assailant had struck her with such force that her head was crushed and bleeding, with most injuries concentrated around her face. The brutal nature of the attack suggested a deep-seated hatred towards Mrs. Xiaoyan. Her neck bore strangulation marks, but the cause of death was determined to be from multiple traumas and acute blood loss. These details indicated that Mrs. Xiaoyan may have been tortured before being killed. According to the police, Mr. Zixiang was attacked first, and Mrs. Xiaoyan, who was lying beside him, woke up and tried to flee, but was caught by the assailant. She was strangled and subdued before being killed. The police concluded that the open wounds on both Mr. Zixiang and Mrs. Xiaoyan were caused by the same weapon. However, a different weapon was used for the head wound on Mrs. Xiaoyan. The investigation team thoroughly examined the room. There were no signs of a struggle. A large amount of cash and jade necklaces in the drawer were untouched. The safe beside the bed was also undisturbed. Under the dressing table, the police found a photo frame with shattered glass and no picture inside. In the hallway trash bin, they found a crumpled photograph of Ling Xiaoyan, which likely came from the broken frame. In the second room, 2 more victims, a male and a female, were found dead on the bed. The victims were identified as Zhu Shui and Zhu Zhonglin, the children of Mr. Zixiang and Mrs. Xiaoyan. Zhu Shui and Zhu Zhonglin had deep wounds on their left chests. Their legs were straight, the bedsheets were not rumpled, and there were no signs of struggle. Upon inspection, the police discovered that the weapons used to kill Zhu Shui and Zhu Zhonglin were different. Considering this, the police proposed 2 possibilities. First, the murderer might have used 2 weapons simultaneously, attacking Zhu Shui and Zhu Zhonglin to minimize noise and prevent one from realizing the other was being attacked. Second, there could have been 2 murderers, each armed with a weapon, attacking 1 victim each. The latter theory gained more support, suggesting the involvement of 2 assailants. This was because the weapons used to attack Ling Xiaoyan included both a sharp and a blunt object, indicating the possibility of 2 people attacking her. Zhu Shui and Zhu Zhonglin's bedroom was tidy, with no signs of a struggle. No foreign fingerprints were found at either crime scene. This led to 2 possibilities. Either the perpetrator wore gloves during the crime, or they meticulously cleaned the scene afterward to avoid detection. Zhu Zixiang's villa was quite large, spanning 7 floors. The first floor was spacious and rented out for storage. Except for the 4th and 5th floors, which were in use, the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th floors were unoccupied. The 4th floor was where Zhu Zixiang's family lived, while the 5th floor housed Mrs. Chung and the housekeeper Wang. Occasionally, Wang would rest on the 4th floor to prepare breakfast for the Zhu family in the morning. The villa was built very securely, with high walls topped with barbed wire, and there were no shoe prints around the perimeter. The door showed no signs of forced entry, suggesting there had been no break-in. Based on these details, the police suspected that the perpetrator might have been someone familiar to the family, who was either let in by a family member or had a key to the house. Since all the valuables in the house were untouched, the investigators ruled out robbery as the motive. It was more likely an act of revenge targeting either Mr. Zixiang or Mrs. Xiaoyan. Without useful clues and with surveillance systems not yet widespread at the time, police faced significant challenges in solving the case. As a result, They offered a reward of 50,000 yuan to encourage the public to provide any information or leads related to the case. The investigation revealed that Zhu Zixiang, 44, was the director of the local tax bureau branch in District 8, Heizhou City, Guangxi Province. He was described by colleagues and subordinates as a gentle person. His wife, Ling Xiaoyin, 44, was a businesswoman involved in various industries, including cement sales and real estate development. Given their significant business dealings, their social network was relatively complex. Zhu Zixiang and Ling Xiaoyan had a 14-year-old daughter, Zhu Shui, and a 15-year-old son, Zhu Zhonglin, both attending a local school. The children were well-behaved, had good academic records, and were liked by their teachers and peers. As the investigation team worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the horrific massacre, the residents of Heizhou City began to form their own theories. Some believed that Zhu Zixiang had embezzled public funds with accomplices, leading to a fallout and retribution. Others suspected that Mr. Zixiang had created conflicts and enmities during his work, resulting in this tragic outcome. However, the investigation revealed that Zhu Zixiang worked in a small town with limited power and only 6 subordinates. His income was modest, with most of the family's finances coming from Mrs. Xiaoyan's business ventures. Zhu Zixiang was not involved in embezzlement or bribery, and did not have any deep-seated grudges, as rumored. Initially, the investigation team focused on the sole survivor of the massacre, the housekeeper, Little Wang. They conducted intense interrogations, but Little Wang continually wept. It was discovered that Little Wang was a cousin of Mr. Zixiang, and had been supported by his family due to her difficult circumstances and lack of a husband. She had worked there for many years, living rent-free and earning a salary, leading a relatively comfortable life. Neighbors described Wang as kind, honest, and well-mannered. Given her physical disability and difficulty moving, the police determined that she had a low motive and capability for committing the crime, thus ruling her out as a suspect. The investigation team then delved deeper into the victim's social relationships through Ling Xiaoyin's sister, Ling Xiaohua. She revealed that her brother-in-law was not a good person. Despite being married to her sister for a long time, he continued to secretly see his ex-girlfriend. This situation caused Ling Xiaoyan to consider ending her life multiple times. There had been conflicts and arguments between Zhu Zixiang and his ex-girlfriend's husband. Ling Xiaoyan's social relationships were also complicated. She had been previously married but divorced her first husband, Xiao Guang, when the relationship soured. Despite Xiao Guang's attempts to reconcile, Ling Xiaoyan eventually remarried Zhu Zixiang and had 2 children. Recently, Xiao Guang had approached Xiaoyan, asking her to leave her current husband and return to him. Knowing that Zhu Zixiang was unfaithful, Xiaoyan felt somewhat sympathetic and often met with her ex-husband. Both Zixiang and Xiaoyan had extramarital relationships, leading to frequent conflicts and disagreements. According to housekeeper Little Wang, the couple argued every few days. Little Wang occasionally overheard their arguments. Zixiang disliked Xiaoyan's habit of going out for social drinks in the evenings, while Xiaoyan resented her husband's ongoing relationship with his ex-girlfriend. Based on the testimonies of Little Wang and Ling Xiaohua, the investigation team identified 2 primary suspects. First, Xiaoyan's ex-husband, Xiao Guang, and second, Zhang Shujin, the husband of Zixiang's ex-girlfriend. With additional manpower, the team split into 3 groups. One to continue searching for clues and analyzing the crime scene, a second to visit Xiaowang's residence, and a third to investigate Zhang Shujin. Xiaowang, 45, currently worked as a taxi driver in Heizhou City. When the police arrived at his home, he was surprised and unaware of the reason for their visit. After being informed of Ling Xiaoyan's murder, Xiaowang was shocked and claimed he had no knowledge of the incident. During the subsequent conversation, the investigation team did not mention that Xiaoyan's husband and children were also dead, but Guang eagerly discussed their deaths. This raised suspicion that Guang was trying to act innocent, but inadvertently revealed his knowledge. When the investigators pressed Guang, he admitted to lying. In fact, he was aware of the massacre at his ex-wife's home, but pretended otherwise to avoid trouble. When asked about his whereabouts at around 1 a.m. on May 2nd, Xia Guang stated that he had been driving a regular customer to District 8, Heizhou City. Since this location was close to Zhu Zixiang's house, the police were highly suspicious. However, Xia Guang voluntarily provided the dashcam footage from that night, which ultimately confirmed his alibi. The second investigation team visited the home of Zhu Zixiang's ex-girlfriend and discovered that Zhang Shujin and his wife had left for Yunnan at 4:30 a.m. on May 2nd. Why would he leave for Yunnan so early in the morning? Could he have committed the crime and fled with his family? Wondered one investigator. The team then questioned the neighbors about Zhang Shujin's recent behavior and social relationships. Neighbors described Zhang Shujin as an idle gambler, while his wife, Du Yan, was a housewife. Their economic situation was poor, and the couple frequently argued about money and their children. Despite being married, Du Yan's attractive appearance attracted attention from many men. Recently, some people had seen Zhu Zixiang and Du Yan together in a car, acting very intimate. Based on this information, the police suspected that Zhang Shujin might have discovered his wife's affair and planned to kill Zhu Zixiang's family in revenge. However, further information revealed that on the night of May 1st and the early hours of May 2nd, Zhang Shujin and his wife were at the hospital caring for his mother. At 4:30 a.m. on May 2nd, his mother's condition worsened and she had to be transferred to another facility, with Zhang Shujin and Du Yan accompanying her. Both primary suspects had alibis, leaving the investigation team with no choice but to return to the crime scene to discuss new strategies. While searching for clues in the villa, the police found Ling Xiaoyan's ledger in a cabinet. The ledger meticulously recorded daily transactions. Based on this, the police investigated over 10 people who had borrowed money from the victim's family, but found no suspects. As the case reached a dead end, Ling Xiaoyan's sister, Ling Xiaohua, revealed that her husband Li Lang had a financial dispute with her sister. "My husband worked for my sister, basically supervising the construction site," Ling Xiaohua complained. But in reality, he was more like a servant, never getting any rest. He asked for a raise several times, but was always denied. From Xiaohua's information, the police learned that Li Lang had previously worked at a passenger transport center. He then left that job to work for Ling Xiaoyin, who had promised him a monthly salary of 2,000 yuan, approximately US $275 with room and board. However, Li Lang only received 1,500 yuan per month and was provided meals, but no accommodation. This discrepancy led the police to suspect that Li Lang could be the perpetrator. However, during the investigation, Li Lang provided evidence proving his innocence. Once again, the leads went cold and the investigation seemed to be at a standstill. The residents of Huzhou City grew increasingly anxious, not knowing who the true killer was or why they had so brutally murdered the family. People feared they might be the next target. These concerns, along with mounting criticism, put immense pressure on the investigation team to solve this severe case quickly. On May 8, 2011, Huzhou City Police increased the reward from 50,000 yuan to 200,000 yuan, equivalent to $27,500. Despite receiving 80 to 90 calls daily, none had been helpful for the investigation. The investigation team decided to re-examine the crime scene. This time, they made a crucial discovery. They found a sock print in the dust on the floor of an empty room on the 6th floor, and a slipper print at the crime scene on the 4th floor. Analysis revealed that the sock print on the 6th floor belonged to a man approximately 1.6 meters tall, while the slipper print on the 4th floor was partial and belonged to a woman. Based on this, the police speculated that after committing the crime, the perpetrator wiped away fingerprints and shoe prints, but failed to completely clean the slipper print. The slipper, identified by Mrs. Chung and housekeeper Wang, was an indoor slipper that Wang had placed by the door, size 37, but it was now missing. From this information, the investigators deduced that there were at least one male and one female suspect. The male was about 1.65 meters tall, and the female was under 1.6 meters tall. They had a key to the Zhu family's house and were familiar with the victims. The suspects had premeditated the crime, sneaked into the house late at night, and calmly cleaned the crime scene, erasing fingerprints from door handles and stair railings. The police then investigated the whereabouts of the house keys. The 7-story house had the first floor rented out for storage, and the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th floors were unoccupied. The Zhu family lived on the 4th floor, while housekeeper Little Wang and Mrs. Chung stayed on the 5th floor. To enter the Zhu family's bedroom, the perpetrator needed a key to the house and the 4th floor. Thus, the murderer had a full set of Zhu family keys. The family had 5 sets of keys, one for each of the couple, one for Mrs. Chung, one shared by the 2 children, and a spare set kept hidden. After the incident, All 5 sets of keys were found, indicating that the perpetrator had made a duplicate key. The police launched an investigation into the relatives and friends of the Zhu family, who might have had access to the keys. 10 days after the murder, Mrs. Chung, who had been bedridden with grief, started to recover. She remembered that a few months prior, she had stayed at her daughter's house for a while and was given the keys. Feeling uncomfortable, she returned to her old home with her daughter, Ling Xiaohua, after a few days. She gave the keys to Xiaohua to return, meaning Xiaohua had held the keys, and had the opportunity to duplicate them. With this new lead, the police focused on Ling Xiaohua, noting that she was about 1.6 meters tall and wore size 37 shoes, matching the description of the female suspect. Investigating secretly, they found that Ling Xiaohua had called her sister the day before the murder and had made multiple calls to a young man named Lu Xingming between 8 p.m. and 2 to 3 a.m. on the night of the crime. Further investigation revealed that Lu Xingming was the boyfriend of Su Jie, Xiaohua's niece. Along with Xiaohua's suspicious actions, Xingming matched the description of the male suspect at the crime scene. Neighbors reported that Su Jie's brother, Su Kejiang, who had a limp, was seen near the victim's house on the night of the murder. He often visited his aunt Xiaoyan, making him memorable to the neighbors. Suspecting their involvement, the police planned to apprehend Su Jie and Xingming. However, just as they prepared to arrest them, Su Jie and Xingming fled Hezhou City. The investigation team tracked them as they traveled from Fushuan to Yongzhou City, Hunan, then to Zhujiang, and finally to Dongguan City, Guangdong Province. It seemed they were trying to escape, continuously moving across various cities. On May 18, 2011, the police apprehended suspects Ling Xiaohua, Su Kejiang, Su Jie, and Lu Xingming. After evading capture, the 4 were finally arrested at a hotel in Guangdong Province. Faced with intense interrogation, Su Jie broke down in tears and fearfully confessed. She admitted that Ling Xiaohua had given her the keys to Ling Xiaoyan's house to make duplicates. A year ago, Ling Xiaohua had already begun plotting to murder her sister's family. Despite Su Jie's attempts to dissuade her, she couldn't prevent Ling Xiaohua from carrying out her plan. This time, Ling Xiaohua hid her intentions from Su Jie and convinced her boyfriend Lu Xingming to commit the crime together. After hours of denial, Ling Xiaohua finally admitted that Su Jie's account was accurate. Ling Xiaohua confessed that she had harbored deep resentment towards her sister for a long time. She wanted to kill Ling Xiaoyan's entire family, so that her mother would inherit the family assets, which she then planned to manipulate for her own gain. Her confession left all the investigators present in shock. Born in 1975 into a modest farming family in Hezhou City, Guangxi Province, Ling Xiaohua was one of 5 siblings. Xiaoyin was the 3rd child with an older sister and brother, and 2 younger siblings. Due to financial hardships, none of the 5 siblings could continue their education for long. The daughters married soon after leaving school. Ling Xiaohua, petite and charming with a talent for conversation, married well. Her husband indulged her every desire, allowing Xiaohua to regularly send money to her parents. At the same time, her second sister Xiaoyan struggled with a difficult marriage and financial instability. Xiaohua's first husband was a traffic cop responsible for managing office seals, which made her feel proud. Back then, my brother-in-law often needed help and frequently borrowed money from my husband, Xiaohua recounted. I felt like a queen at my parents' home. Shortly after, Ling Xiaoyan divorced, left penniless and jobless. Feeling pity for her sister, Xiaohua requested money from her husband to support Xiaoyan and wholeheartedly helped her start a business. With determination and skill, Ling Xiaoyan successfully launched her business, largely thanks to her family's support, especially from her sister Ling Xiaohua. Later, Xiaoyan met and remarried Zhu Zixiang, the director of the local tax bureau. Together, they built a happy home with 2 children and their business flourished, improving their financial status. Just when it seemed the sisters had both achieved their desired lives, Xiaohua's marriage fell apart. She left her husband with nothing. Ling Xiaohua then married Li Hao, an ordinary employee at a transport company. Li Hao was kind but timid and incompetent, with a limited earning capacity. From this point, Xiaoyan replaced Xiaohua's position of prestige. Once living in luxury, admired by everyone, Xiaohua suddenly lost everything, leaving her deeply dissatisfied and disheartened. Her pain was exacerbated by the fact that she had always been considered the smartest and most beloved among her siblings. But now, her second sister Xiaoyan had taken that place. Xiaoyan's success grew. She built a mansion, bought luxury cars, developed real estate, and provided jobs for many relatives, earning everyone's respect and dependence. Xiaoyan was now the revered family member, while Xiaohua felt like nothing more than a puppet. Ling Xiaoyan had borrowed more than 400,000 yuan, approximately $55,000 US dollars, from Xiaohua to finance her business operations. As a result, Xiaohua believed that her sister's business success was due to her help and felt she deserved a share of the profits. Xiaohua had approached Xiaoyin several times about this issue, but was always dismissed. She felt that her sister, who had become successful with her help, was now ungrateful and disdainful, refusing to share any profits. This sense of betrayal and resentment grew stronger over time. Their eldest sister, Ling Xiaoping, suffered from diabetes and heart disease. As her condition worsened, Xiaohua frequently visited and cared for her, while Xiaoyan rarely appeared, only covering part of the medical expenses. Xiaohua was discontented, believing Xiaoyan was stingy and heartless, unwilling to fully support their struggling family. On the night of May 1st, Ling Xiaohua called Ling Xiaoyan to borrow money again. Perhaps because she had borrowed too many times, Xiaoyan refused with an irritated tone. Ling Xiaoyin shouted over the phone, "Useless, why don't you use your brain to think of a way to get rich? Stop relying on others just because they're wealthy. I've given you enough. I won't lend you another penny." These words felt like a slap in the face, deeply wounding Xiaohua. She felt like a beggar, her rage exploding, and she decided to exact revenge on her ungrateful sister. That night, Ling Xiaohua called Su Kazhong and Lu Xingming, promising that once the plan succeeded, would take 200,000 yuan from her mother's inheritance and split it with them. Tempted by greed, Shengming and Su Kazhong immediately agreed. Late on the night of May 1st, 2011, this group used the key to sneak into Zhu Zixiang's house and brutally murdered the 4 members of Zixiang's family on the 4th floor. The killers first targeted Zhu Zixiang's 2 children, then Zixiang and Xiaoyan. Ling Xiaoyan suffered the longest and died last. Their swift and simultaneous actions prevented any noise. They used duct tape to silence Ling Xiaoyin, rendering her unable to scream for help. Ling Xiaohua's initial plan was to kill her mother as well, so the inheritance would be transferred to her. However, that night Mrs. Chung was at the hospital caring for her daughter, Ling Xiaoping, and was not at home. After committing the murders, the group wiped away fingerprints and blood stains, but failed to clean everything completely, leaving evidence that incriminated them. Ling Xiaohua, Su Kazhong, and Lu Xingming were sentenced to death in the first trial. They appealed, and Ling Xiaohua requested a psychiatric evaluation. She repeatedly emphasized that her motive was not money, but the emotional betrayal by her sister. On April 1st, 2012, the court rejected the appeals of Ling Xiaohua and her accomplices. Upon verification, the court found that Ling Xiaohua and her family had no history of mental illness, and were fully capable of civil conduct when the crime was committed. Therefore, her request for a psychiatric forensic evaluation was also denied. The death sentences were carried out in January 2013. In this case, Ling Xiaohua cruelly, along with her accomplices, murdered her sister's entire family out of impulsive thoughts. Xiaohua's actions brought immense misfortune not only to the victims, but also to herself and her own family. Both Xiaoyin and Xiaohua had their faults. One was overly focused on money and was stingy, while the other had extreme tendencies and harbored jealousy, leading both into a tragic downfall. As for Xiaohua's accomplices, their moral integrity was overshadowed by material greed, and they ultimately paid a high price for their heinous actions. Story 5. The phone rang several times, but no one picked up. At 11 a.m. on August 9, 1999, Zillian called her sister's house in Anhai Town, Xinjiang City, Fujian Province, China, but no one answered. Thinking her sister and brother-in-law were busy, Zillian called again around 4 p.m., but still no one picked up. At this point, she sensed something was wrong. Zillian's sister lived a wealthy life, staying home all day as a housewife, caring for her children. If she had to go out unexpectedly, her 2 daughters would still be home. After several unanswered calls to the landline, Zillian tried calling her nieces and brother-in-law's mobile phones, but no one answered. She decided to go to her sister's house to check. Upon opening the door, she immediately smelled gas and hurried inside, calling for her sister and brother-in-law, but got no response. Searching the house, she found her sister's bedroom door slightly ajar. Inside, her nieces were tied to the bed with ropes and were no longer breathing. She quickly ran to notify the neighborhood security guard, who then called the police. Within 10 minutes, the police arrived at the scene. From Zillion's information, the police identified the victims as the homeowner Wu Shijia, vice president of the Hungan Group, his wife Xie Yujin, and their two daughters Wu Xiyun and Wu Donghong, both working for their father's company. Entering the house, the police were hit by the strong smell of gas. The living room showed no signs of disorder, and the main door was undamaged, indicating it had been opened from the inside. The first bedroom on the left was where the two daughters were murdered. The door was wide open, and they were tied with ties with their eyes and mouths taped shut. Their bodies bore no open wounds, and they had been suffocated. The room was tidy, with a black handbag on the bed and another bag on the floor, its contents spilled out. Their money and jewelry were intact, except for their mobile phones, which were missing. In the adjacent bedroom, the police found Wu Shijia's body. His hands and feet were tied, and he had 3 fatal wounds on his neck, with blood splattered across the room. The killer had been ruthless. The bed had a pillow with a small blood stain, deliberately flipped over and placed back. The window was closed and the curtains drawn. Xie Yujin was found dead in the 3rd bedroom, also bound and suffocated like the others. Near the window in her room, the police found a phone off the hook, as if she had tried to call for help but couldn't. Through investigation, the police learned that Wuxijia had 3 children, 1 son and 2 daughters. His son Wu Shiba worked for Hunan, a company under the Hungjin Group. But in early 1999, Wu Shiba was severely injured in a car accident and died after rescue efforts failed. The eldest daughter, Wu Shiyun, who was murdered at 27, had studied in Singapore and was responsible for external reception at the Hungjin Group. The youngest daughter, Wu Donghong, graduated from Huaqiao University in Guangzhou in 1998, was beautiful, easygoing, and worked in finance at the Hungjin Group. The only surviving family member was the daughter-in-law, Yang Mianmian, who was out on an errand and thus escaped the tragedy. Yang Mianmian, who was married to Wu Shiba for 3 years, had no children. She had returned to her parents' home after work before the incident occurred, narrowly avoiding disaster. The victim, Wu Shijia, was the former vice president of the Henjan Group with assets worth hundreds of millions of yuan. Initially, the police suspected the killer was after money, but there were no clear signs of theft and not much appeared to be missing. This led them to believe the motive might be personal vendetta. Late on the night of August 9, 1999, a special task force of 60 criminal investigators was formed. The city and provincial police leaders took the case very seriously. The police station building in Anhai Town, Xinjiang City, was brightly lit. All officers in charge of the case were busy investigating this bloody and brutal murder. Based on the victim's belongings, investigators determined that 3 mobile phones and some other valuables were missing. At first glance, the crime scene appeared to be a robbery, but there were few signs of ransacking, and some cash was left in the room. So what was the motive behind the killer's actions? The investigation proceeded, and a province-wide cooperation notice was issued. Forensic doctors estimated the victim's time of death. The first to die was Xie Yujin around 10 a.m. Next were the 2 daughters, around 10:30 a.m., and finally, Wuxijia around 12:30 p.m. The time of Wuxijia's death was over 2 hours after Xie Yujin's. If the killer came for money, he could have taken it after killing Xie Yujin. Why did he stay to kill the entire family before leaving? Once again, the police were certain the motive was not robbery. Wu Shijia's house was located in the Hungjin Group's company dormitory, where all the company's management staff lived. The incident happened at noon, and some neighbors in the residential area were having lunch, but no one heard any commotion from Wu Shijia's apartment on the 5th floor. Coincidentally, the Hungjin Group's chairman, who lived on the 4th floor, was out with his family that day, and the 6th floor was under renovation and unoccupied. 2 suspicious points were raised by some police officers. First, the victim's family lived in the Hungjin Group's residential area, and the main door of Wu Shijia's house showed no signs of forced entry. This implied that the perpetrator might have been someone familiar to the homeowner, or at least someone the homeowner trusted enough to let inside. Second, some speculated that the daughter-in-law, Yang Mianmian, might be involved in the crime. Although not much property was stolen from the house, the killer might have been after the family's substantial fortune. Yang Mianmian couldn't inherit the entire estate if only Wu Shijia was dead, but if the entire family was gone, the vast fortune would belong to her. Based on these suspicions, Yang Mianmian became the first suspect. The police then investigated Yang Mianmian's activities that day. It was found that she had returned to her parents' home the night before the incident. The next day, she stayed at her office all day, never leaving for more than 15 minutes, and her company was quite far from the house, making it unlikely that she was the perpetrator. Meanwhile, another police team investigated the Hongjin Group's employees. According to the investigation, Wu Shijia's family was known to be friendly and kind to relatives and colleagues, with no known conflicts. Since they worked at the same company, the two daughters usually went home with their father, but on the day of the incident, they went home earlier because their father was busy. During the investigation, the company director provided a new lead. Wu Shijia had recently been visiting the Amping Hotel to meet a woman. Based on information provided by the Hongjin Group's executive director, the police immediately identified the woman as Tang Min from Jingmen City, Hubei Province. Their investigation revealed that Tang Min had business dealings with the Hongjin Group a few years ago. She had been living in Guangdong but recently appeared in Xinjiang for unclear reasons and checked into the Amping Hotel a few days before the incident. Coincidentally, Tang Min had been staying at the Amping Hotel until the day of the incident when she mysteriously disappeared in the afternoon. The police promptly summoned Tang Min. She seemed confused and unaware of the situation when she saw the police. They informed her about the Wu Shijia family's murder, which shocked her. Tang Min explained that she had known Wu Shijia for a long time and that he had helped her many times as a boss. She was very grateful to him. She had come to Xinjiang to seek his help in establishing a beauty salon. Tang Min added, "I met him on the 8th and left on high on the morning of the 9th. I had arranged to meet him at a coffee shop on the afternoon of the 9th, but when I called him that afternoon, no one answered." After the police investigation, Tang Min was cleared of any involvement in the case. In mid-August 1999, the police publicly announced a reward of 200,000 yuan, around $30,000 for any leads from the public. The substantial reward garnered significant attention, resulting in numerous calls to the police within a short period. A few days later, a man rushed to the task force to report something. On the night of August 11th, I overheard 3 villagers talking about making a big score in on high. These 3 villagers, who had always been idle and so poor that they struggled to eat, suddenly became wealthy. Hearing this, the police immediately began investigating the 3 individuals and found an amount of money in the suspects' homes that matched the scene of the crime. Although the source of the money was unclear, the neighbors' suspicions and the men's suspicious behavior led the police to summon all 3 for questioning. These individuals were Qin Jian, Li Baiyin, and Lin Qian. Upon seeing the police, all 3 men tried to flee. The police gave chase and quickly apprehended them. Before the police could even ask any questions, Lin Qian blurted out, "I didn't do anything. It was the other 2 who lured me into it." The police were surprised as they hadn't mentioned anything yet. If they were innocent, why would they panic and flee? During the interrogation, the police finally mentioned the Wu family case. The 3 men insisted they didn't know anyone named Wu and had never committed any murders. They explained that their recent behavior stemmed from financial desperation, leading them to form a gang that extorted and occasionally stole vehicles from Xinjiang residents. On August 9th, when the murder occurred, the 3 were threatening and extorting money from a fellow Xinjiang native, making it impossible for them to have committed the crime. After verifying their alibi with the fellow native, the police confirmed their story. Despite their criminal activities, the 3 men were detained and further investigated. The case saw no progress for a month, affecting Hongjin's stock stability, prompting the board to offer a $1,000 reward for any leads. A few months later, on December 26, 1999, Wu Shiji's daughter-in-law, Yang Minmin, received a phone call from a man in Xiamen. He claimed he had been hired to commit the murders and that his employer was now planning to kill him to cover up the crime. He told Yang Mianyan that if she was willing to pay $1,000, he would turn himself and along with her to the police. Without giving her a chance to respond, the man said he would call back the next day. Initially, Yang Mianyan was skeptical, as many people had been bothering her for months due to the reward. After some thought, Yang Mianyan decided to inform the police about the call. The following day, December 27, 1999, the victim's family received another call from the same man. By tracking and tracing the phone number, the police discovered that the call came from a public phone in Xiamen. Upon investigating all public phones in the area, they found that 2 calls were made during that time frame. The first call was to Wu Shiji's daughter-in-law, Yang Mianyan. The second call was to Wu Shiba. But why was Washiba involved in this case? He had been dead for some time. The police began questioning why someone would call a deceased person, or if the caller was unaware that Washiba had died. Either way, the police were certain that this person knew the Wu family. After further investigation, the police identified the caller as Wu Honka. Surprisingly, Wu Honka was from the same village as Wu Shiji and had been a primary school classmate of Washiba. His home was less than 100 meters from the Wu family's home in Lingxua village, Anhai Town. The police immediately went to Lingxua village, Anhai Town that night, and learned from his family that Wu Honka had left home 3 months earlier. They had not been in contact with him and did not know his whereabouts. Before leaving, he had told his family that he was going out to do business. Although they did not find their target, the investigators searched his home and successfully extracted Wu Honka's fingerprints. After careful identification by technicians, the police confirmed that Wu Honka's fingerprints matched with those found at the crime scene. The investigation into Wu Honka's social connections revealed that he had been in contact with Wu Yong from Shenzhen multiple times. The police immediately split into 2 teams. One rushed to Shenzhen to find Wu Yong, while the other focused on analyzing Wu Honka's social connections and attempting to locate him. When they met Wu Yong, he claimed not to know the suspect but mentioned that his sister was close to him. However, his sister had returned to their hometown in Sichuan, and Wu Yong asked the police to come back later when she returned. Wu Yong's attitude was highly suspicious as he repeatedly tried to dismiss the police. The more he tried to avoid them, the more suspicious the police became. They requested to search his apartment, but Wu Yong immediately refused. The police then threatened that if he didn't allow the search, they would consider him an accomplice. Hearing this, Wu Yong reluctantly agreed to let the police in. Besides the living room, the apartment had 2 bedrooms, one of which belonged to his sister. As soon as they opened his sister's door, the police noticed a package of food on the table. The bedsheets were disturbed, and the mattress was still warm, indicating someone had been there. Realizing she couldn't hide any longer, Wu Yong's sister came out of the closet. She was the woman Wu Honka had been frequently contacting. According to her, she hadn't seen him in a long time. However, when the police checked her phone messages, they found numerous messages from unknown numbers. She claimed she hadn't met him recently, but he had been texting her, asking to stay with her for a few days. She had refused, but he continued to text her from different numbers. When asked why they were avoiding the police, Wu Yong said he was unaware of his sister's connection to Wu Honka. After hearing her story about his persistent requests, despite her refusals, Wu Yong had told his sister to be wary of him. When the police unexpectedly came to investigate Wu Honka's whereabouts, they were frightened and didn't want to get involved. The police then collected information on the unknown numbers that had texted the sister. Tracking these numbers, they finally apprehended Wu Honka hiding in Shijijuang on January 18, 2000. Wu Honka, born in 1971, was from the same village as Wu Shiji. He was the eldest of 4 children with 3 younger sisters. He got married in 1993 and had a daughter. Wu Honka had a violent nature, never read books, and enjoyed drinking, gambling, and fighting. After graduating at 15, he worked for 8 years in an auto parts factory owned by his uncle. At 23, he returned to his hometown to start a family. With the support of his father-in-law, he bought some machinery and opened a small auto parts processing plant, making some money. His lifestyle changed, and he began frequenting high-end places like restaurants, nightclubs, and bars. However, his good times didn't last long. Within a year, his small business could no longer support the lavish lifestyle he desired. He sold some of his machinery to make ends meet, but business declined further, and he eventually sold everything. From a business owner, he became a drifter. His drinking worsened, and he began violently abusing his wife and daughter. At this point, he remembered his primary school friend Washiba and his wealthy family. He planned to borrow money, but was prepared to eliminate them if they refused. On the morning of August 9, 1999, he concealed a knife and tape on himself and posed as a plastic sales representative to visit their home. Wu Shiji's wife, Ziyu Jin, recognized him as a fellow villager and a friend of her late son, so she let him in without suspicion. Once inside, Wu Honka explained his connection to her son and asked for a loan. When Ziyu Jin refused his unreasonable request, he argued with her. She asked him to leave and moved to the window to call security. Wu Honka then attacked her, strangling her until she stopped breathing and tied her up to stage a robbery. After the murder, Wu Hongke searched for cash and accidentally encountered Wu Shiyin and Wu Donghong, who had just returned home and were unaware of their mother's fate. He broke into their room, threatened them with a knife, and tied them up using ties. He closed the windows, drew the curtains, and strangled both sisters to death. Having committed the murders, Wu Hongke felt he needed to find some money to justify his crime. He searched the house methodically, which explained why the police found no signs of a hasty ransacking. After finding over 6,000 yuan in cash, he was about to flee when he heard the front door open. Startled, he hid behind the door and drew his knife when he saw someone enter. The person was none other than Wu Shiji. He forced Wu Shiji into the bedroom and tied him up, recognizing Wu Hongke. Wu Shiji offered him any amount of money he wanted, hoping to avoid further violence. However, having already murdered 3 people, Wu Hongke knew there was no turning back and had no intention of sparing Wu Shiji. Wu Hongke first tried to smother him with a quilt, but when Wu Shiji struggled fiercely, he stabbed him in the neck 3 times, killing him. After committing the murders, Wu Hongke took a gold necklace from Wu Shiji's body and fled to Lingxua village with the stolen money. Before leaving, he cut the gas line, fearing anyone might still be alive. After committing the crime, Wu Hongke used the stolen money for gambling and partying, quickly spending it all. When he heard that the Hengen Group had offered a $1 million reward for information on the perpetrator, his greed and desperation led him to call the Wu family's daughter-in-law, Yang Mianmian, pretending to have information in hopes of claiming the reward. Wu Hongke confessed that during his time hiding in the village, he was plagued by nightmares. He often dreamt of the Wu family standing by his bed, staring at him, or of the police bursting in to arrest him. Unable to bear it any longer, he left home. Wu Hongke explained that he only felt safe in crowded places, spending nights in dormitories with colleagues, or staying with acquaintances to get some sleep. Because Wu Hongke committed the crime alone and left few clues at the scene, the case took a long time to solve. On December 20th, 2002, the Chuanjiao Intermediate People's Court found Wu Hongke guilty of intentional homicide and robbery, sentencing him to death. After the first trial, Wu Hongke appealed, arguing that the details in the first trial were unclear and that the death penalty could lead to a wrongful conviction. After a second trial lasting 9 months, the Provincial High People's Court concluded that the evidence proved Wu Hongke acted alone. Firstly, the 4 victims were all tied up, with their mouths taped shut, showing consistent methods and details. For fingerprints extracted from the binding ropes, and tape at the crime scene matched Wu Hongke's fingerprints. Secondly, the victims returned home one after another and were killed in 3 separate bedrooms, fitting Wu Hongke's confession of killing the 4 victims within 3 hours. After being brought to justice, Wu Hongke confessed multiple times, with his crime details corroborated by other evidence. Thirdly, in the 2 years after the first trial, Wu Hongke never provided any substantial evidence suggesting others were involved, nor did he offer any specific clues indicating other culprits. There was no evidence pointing to anyone else's involvement. Ultimately, after 2 trials, the lower court upheld the original death sentence for Wu Hongke. The special task force traveled over 40,000 kilometers across 16 provinces and cities in 36 counties, interviewing more than 10,000 people, and investigating nearly 1,000 leads. Solving this brutal massacre was an enormous effort. Besides the savage nature of the crime, why did the vice president's murder captivate so much media attention? Let's explore who Wu Shiji was. Wu Shiji was one of the founding members of the Hengen Group. Before his murder, he owned over 24 million shares of the company, valued at over 70 million Hong Kong dollars. Born in 1948 in a farming family in Lingxua village, Fujian province, Wu Shiji had to help care for his 3 siblings from a young age. As he grew up, Wu Shiji worked in various jobs such as mountain clearing and fertilizer hauling. The hardships he endured in his rural home shaped his hardworking nature and resilience. In 1985, he co-founded the Hengen Industrial Company with Su Wenbao, Su Lianjia and others, serving as the general manager. To develop the company, he traveled nationwide to promote their products, overcoming numerous challenges to establish a sales market. In December 1998, the company successfully listed in Hong Kong, boasting 8 subsidiaries. In the months before his murder, Wu Shiji was highly respected in Lingxua village. He had been a renowned architect, with many houses he built still standing in the village. Socially, Wu Shiji was very community-minded, donating tens of millions of yuan to public welfare activities. His family also donated 10 million yuan to the local charity federation, establishing a family charity fund. Given Wu Shiji's influence, his tragic murder drew intense media attention, adding pressure on the police. Money can lure people into the trap of crime, but it is essential to remember that money is just a material possession. It can be used in life, but it cannot be taken beyond death.